Welcome to the Chadlee Show's After Hour Podcast. Your host, Lee Watkins, your favorite third scale pilot. Me, Joe Vermillion, your master ARF assembler, and the man who no longer uses his nickname, Chad Osmus. Get ready and enjoy the show. All right, welcome everybody to the Chadlee Show. I'm Chad. I have Lee here.
Hey guys.
And Lyle's here already, so we'll get into his interview later. You want to say hi, Lyle?
Hey everybody.
All right.
Here's one thing I would like to mention.
What's that, Lee?
There should be 4 of us here, but there's only 3 of us here, so that makes 3/4 of us. Guess which one's not here?
Yeah, 3/4 Joe. It was actually part of the terms for Lyle to do the interview was we had to pick a time when Joe wasn't available because he really doesn't like Joe Vermillion.
It was part of my rider.
That's right.
So
the check's in the mail.
So anyway,
and M&M's with all the green picked out.
This is episode number 2. And first thing we have after the introduction here is we're going to interview Lyle. Then we're moving on to some sanding tips. We have a new segment to the show, In the Toolbox with Lee Watkins.
That sounds scary to me.
And then we have
Welcome, Lyle.
we have our What's Happening, which I tell you what, on my end, there's a crap load of stuff happening. And then another new part, Safety 101, which, you know, is because of Lee. Then we have the Freedom of Information Act, and we will do the notable events. So let's get started. Lyle, you want to introduce yourself, tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Lyle Vasser. I live in Lee Summit, just outside of Kansas City, Missouri. Been an RC hobby since 1977 when I was in 7th grade. And my dad had a little, almost a free flight kind of plane that you just let go and fly, and we chased it around all over the field. And that was our first foray into RC. And I think the transmitter you hit a switch, you hit it a couple times to go up and 3 times to go down, and one of those kind of apparatuses, and I was hooked ever since, I think.
Cool.
You know, Lee could probably fly if he only had to push one button.
Oh, heck yeah. I might even be able to land.
So I do have one thing I need to ask you about right away, Lyle.
Sure.
We had we asked for everybody's questions, stuff like that, and there was one that came in as a comment from Dale Womack. Tell him never to turn into a dead engine.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a story?
Dale was with us when I had my first one engine out on the Zeroli B25. And I thought when that engine went out, it was all over. Steve Forrest and I were flying together in formation. He had a B-17. I was in the B-20, or not in it, but flying the B-25. We were coming down the corner down in Muskogee at the world-famous Hatbox Airport, where all those guys down in Oklahoma in that area fly. The engine went out. Didn't really know it. I just happened to see the one engine windmilling. That's how well the plane flew with one engine out. I thought, hey, at first I thought, oh no, this thing's going to crash. We've all seen that story on YouTube, you know, where the B-25 or a twin engine RC airplane, one engine goes out and it spirals in. This thing was flying great. Just stayed in formation with Steve, told I had an engine out. And I started to turn, and as I started to turn, it would have been into the dead engine. And Dale Womack yells out, "Don't turn into the dead engine." And with that, I think he helped save the aircraft, and I turned around, landed downwind, and made a good landing, got it back in one piece. So.
Is that the one that I saw you flying this last year?
Yeah. Been flying that thing for 11 years now.
How did, you mentioned Steve Forrest, how did you and Steve Forrest meet up? I mean, have you guys been buddies for a long time?
Yeah, we've been kind of flying around. We kind of hit air shows, not together, but met each other at a couple air shows there in mid-Missouri. I'm from small town of Salisbury, Missouri, and he's from the town of Sturgeon, Missouri, there just north of Columbia. And one day my dad said, I hear they're having a model airplane show over in Sturgeon. Let's go see what's up. We went over there, and that's how it all kind of started. We got to know Steve and been friends ever since. And that was about 1998 or so.
All right.
He puts on a great event down there, and I
Oh, yeah,
put
that
down there
thing's
the
been
last
going
2
on.
years.
That thing's been going on since 98, 97, around in there. And it's just grown every year. And you guys coming up just made it spectacular this year.
Yeah, you know, I have my way. You guys, you and Steve do some pretty sweet formation flights with your P-51s, too.
Oh, thanks, man.
Definitely.
Yeah, that kind of started with, I had a top flight Corsair, and Steve had I think it was a Byron's Zero. And we got up and kind of did a make-believe dogfighting show at his event. And that was so much fun, we decided, I wonder if we could fly those together. And we started that, flying together, and we got comfortable with that, and we kind of got into how each other turns. I mean, if one guy turns real sharp and fast and the other guy turns real slow, you're going to hit. We kind of got that ironed out, and over the years we kind of developed a technique that works pretty good, where we can fly them fairly close together.
You guys ever hit each other?
Nope, we never have, believe it or not.
It doesn't make it as exciting. You know, people, it's like NASCAR. People only watch formation to see if the planes touch.
Well, I think that's why people watch. Those two going to finally hit. We have had one instance where we got pretty close. It was right here in Lee Summit, and we were just learning to do. We didn't actually do true formation. We would stand at separate gates, and as we got ready to turn down the flight line on the final pass, we would kind of do this crossover, and that way that was just kind of a thing we worked out, and that turned out to be not very safe. And when we got really close, we knew it was close because there were several guys following us with cameras, and the cameras just started clicking, click, 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 click. We knew it got pretty close, and in the pictures, I think we missed each other by about a foot. So we thought we need to come up with a different plan of attack on that, and we started really sticking to a true formation where I always kind of stay in the number 2 position and behind him just in trail a little bit.
Well, you know, if you try to hit each other, you never will.
Oh no!
I mean, that's the key.
Yeah,
it's really hard to do. I was trying to hit Lee last year at Muncie.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Trying to hit Lee or trying to hit Lee's airplane? Because I try to hit Lee.
Oh, just go for relief.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's the best way.
We had I don't know, were you there the year they had the turn and burn at Muncie?
Yeah,
the little foamy things?
Yep.
Yes. My whole objective was to hit Lee. I didn't even go through one obstacle.
Why do you think they put me on the course? At least people were trying.
It was fantastic. I destroyed 2 planes trying to hit them.
Yeah. The thing with formation flying too, Lyle. No, I've done a lot of it. You know, with Chuck Hamilton and stuff too. You spend more time flying the other guy's airplane than you actually do your own because you're watching him for cues and everything else.
Oh yeah, it's I call it my formation goggles because it's a certain kind of mindset because you really dial in your peripheral vision. So you're not just zeroed in tunnel vision on your own airplane, but you also got his in your peripheral at all times. And I'm always judging where he's going to be so I can place my airplane right where it needs to be, especially when we're coming down flight line pass. That's where you want to tighten it up. And that's the hardest one to get, ironically. So yeah, when you're turning to come down the flight line, the planes are out there pretty far, and the only way I know if I'm ahead of him or behind him, luckily our P-51s are the same wingspan, but I'm judging wingspans.
Exactly.
Mine's just it's a little bit shorter wingspan than his. I know I'm okay, and then we never allow. We always keep blue sky between us, just a sliver of blue sky, and you can't ever hit that way.
Yep.
And I think that's been the secret to our success of not hitting all these years.
Well, and that's the advantage of having the same plane when you guys are flying the same exact plane, same scale.
Oh yeah, same engines, same prop, and ironically or interestingly, you can see that sometimes different fuel. One will get fuel at a different fuel gas station or something, and that plane will be a little bit hotter than the other.
There you go. Well, I know when we always did formation, we'd actually split the runway into like running lanes on a track.
Oh, yeah.
and you call your lane and you stay in your lane no matter what. You try to anyway. So, but it just makes it a little bit easier.
That's a great thing about Steve Forrest too. When we fly formation, he holds a line. So when he enters into a turn or he enters onto a line that he's going to be parallel to that runway. So I don't have to worry about him drifting or anything like that. He's going to stay on that line, and all I got to do is stay there. I don't have to worry about him going into me or anything like that, or when we go into a turn, climbing into me or anything like that.
Exactly.
People don't trust flying formation with me. I don't blame them.
I do it with other people. Jimmy Kalman down in Arizona, he and I won best formation flight at Warbirds of the Rockies a couple of months ago. He had a B-17 and with my B-25, and we flew, well, probably about 1,000 people there maybe, and as they did pyro and all that stuff, and flew around formation. That was pretty cool. Jimmy's pretty stable, but Bomber's actually a little bit easier because they can't do a lot of things quick.
Yeah.
So.
In O'Connell up here, they do an air show, and they have a show team, and they set off pyro. And there was one year, the pyro went off, and there was a coursed air flying over the top of it, and there was shrapnel that went right through the wing, blew the canopy right off the airplane.
That would be awesome.
It was hilarious.
We got bracketed pretty good on the first pass, and they shot up the anti-aircraft shells, and they bracketed us pretty good. It looked really good. So it wasn't close enough. I didn't have to check for holes when I came back. So.
Nice. Definitely flying with pyro is a lot of fun, though.
Oh man, it adds to the excitement. That's for sure. And there's all that going on, and then timing it, and the pyro guys, they're so sophisticated. They're sitting there with a laptop and trigger buttons, and okay, on this pass it's hot. You guys are going to drop bombs, and when you do, and they can time it right when the bombs hit. They'll light it off. It looks realistic.
They couldn't do that with Lee.
Yeah.
We tried that in Muncie. He dropped a bomb way over at the AMA headquarters.
Yeah. There was a delay fused in that one. It still hasn't gone off.
They've dropped Lee from the insurance now.
Yeah, they did. Oops.
So, along with I want to try and get into something outside of just bullshitting around, but you wrote an article for Model Airplane News, and then I saw on your Facebook that apparently you have written a bunch of them, 6 of them now, right?
Yeah, I added it up. I couldn't believe it's been that many over the years, but yeah. Developed a friendship with Jerry Yarish, who is their senior editor, and he visited my Best Pilot website one day and emailed me. So you got a lot of good information on that site. Would you be interested in writing an article about how you do some of this stuff? And I had some things where I've done some weathering and painting for other guys' model aircraft. And so anyway, that was the first article I did, was how I weathered up a friend of mine's airplane, and with washes and dry brushing and all that stuff. And then one on formation flying, and of course painting the pilots and the way I do go about that. And so yeah, it's been 6 articles. Can't believe it's been that many.
You ever take your pilots out to the shows, like do any trade shows or anything like that with them?
I haven't done the trade shows. I used to take a batch every once in a while to some of the shows around, but a lot of times it just you could sell a couple, and like at Warbirds of the Rockies you could sell quite a few. But lately I've been so busy keeping up with the orders and backlog that I haven't had time to get ahead and get a batch of them to, sitting around to take with me. So it always seems like it was just a kind of a mad dash, and it's just a little bit more laid back, not to have to worry about that at air shows. You
realize after this show you're going to be swamped with orders, because we have like over 150 followers, man.
Yeah.
Man! Oh, that's grown from 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
We just keep creating new names and liking our stuff.
Yeah.
That's one way to do it.
That's
Keep the shareholders happy.
That's right. Definitely. What year did you start Best Pilots, Lyle?
I started that. I had to look that up. It was back in 2008. It kind of coincided with finishing the Zeroli B-25. I got the plane done, and I was putting pictures of it online on one of the forums, and a lot of the guys were asking, well, plane looks really cool. What are you going to do about pilots? And I thought, well, I'll run down to Walmart, find maybe some baseball players or something like that with baseball caps. Maybe I can paint them up olive drab and make those look like, B-25 drivers. Of course, couldn't find anything in 1/8 scale. Everything's in 1/6 or 1/12 scale, and 1/8 it just didn't work. And the plane was looking too good, so I decided, well, with my background in college, did a lot of sculpture work, a lot of portrait painting. I was a courtroom artist in college as well, so really always been fascinated with the human face and doing portrait work. So I thought, well, I'll just sculpt a few pilots and see how that works out. So I did that, put them in the cockpit, and the cockpit on that plane's detailed out pretty good. And a couple of guys on the forum said, hey, that plane looks great, but where'd you get those pilots? I want to buy some. Okay, well, so we'll make some molds. We'll buy some. Sure you will. I tried the mold process because I always was interested in doing that. Made some mold, and lo and behold, the first summer I sold around $600 worth of pilots. And then after the first year, it was almost $2,000 worth of pilots. So then I knew bomber pilots, that's, as you know, you don't see very many bombers out on the flight line. And to sell that many of them that quickly, I thought, well, now there's something here. So let's see if we can ramp this up a little bit. And that's how Best Pilots came about. Nice.
I know I've interviewed you before for different things and whatnot, but
I'm still scarred.
I'm sorry. It'll never go away.
Therapy.
There you go. How long does it take to go from your inception of a pilot, of what you want to create, to your first production run?
It takes about around 100 hours to actually sculpt the pilot itself, and I you want to capture a pilot that's going to go in a lot of kits. You don't want some oddball pilot figure out there that nobody wants. So you want something that's fairly generic, has some mass appeal, makes a fairly good looking subject matter, and is going to go in a lot of different airplanes. So, you want somebody that's make a good-looking P-51 pilot, a European theater kind of guy, Pacific theater, that kind of thing.
Or someone like me.
Or somebody like Chad.
Yeah.
We sell all the kind of Piper airplanes out there that Chad flies.
Thanks.
Him and Captain Eddie. Remember the old Captain Eddie pilots?
Oh, yeah.
From Ace RC?
Yep.
That was a pretty popular one. But anyway, it takes around 100 hours to do the sculpting. I do all the research because when you start to sculpt something in 3D, you really can't fake it as far as goggles. So when you think of goggles, you've got an image in your head, but when you really get to looking at it, there were two major types of goggles. One was the M44 goggle that even tank crews used, and a lot of guys use those, and those were used later in the war. And then there are the ones that you kind of see the prototypical the eyepiece kind of goggles, and with the metal frames and all that, and two lenses, and I think those were the AN 460s, I believe. And I can't believe I know those numbers. I think that was close. But that's kind of research goes into that.
You're just making shit up right now. We know that.
You never know.
How does it go if you can't baffle them with
because when you see the goggles head on, it looks one way, but you have to finish that out. You have to go around the side. So what the backside look like? So you have to do the research and find. And thank goodness for eBay, places like that where guys sell outfitter groups and that sell this old World War II paraphernalia, and you can get pictures where they're selling that to show how good a shape it is, and they show the labels and inside out and everything else, and that gives me all the detail I need to finish out how that would actually look.
Cool. Which leads me to another thing: is your research. Obviously eBay is one for internet and stuff for that. What else do you use?
Oh, let's see. I've got several history books. There's a couple of good books on just equipment of the 8th Air Force and 9th Air Force. I've got some of those. There are, some World War II color. Love looking at those because it not only gives you the prototypical shots, but also gives you that color that you can pull from those actual photographs, those old Kodachrome pictures. Interestingly enough, there's not very much color from the German side. Germany didn't develop the color photography, and color photography in World War II in Germany is pretty rare. Didn't know that. So
yeah, I didn't either.
So it's always a question for me sometimes when I do take the color from something that's been on eBay. Was it actually that color, or has it aged to that color? And that's something I always kind of play back and forth with.
Yeah, I can see that. Just the sunlight.
You know how hard it is to get color just right in scale contests and that with aircraft.
There you go. Do you have any others?
I know a guy we could. We'll just leave it at that.
There you go. There you go. I know there's been a couple people too that's asked, how do you get the pilot so light versus like a G.I. Joe figure?
Oh yeah, my pilots as opposed to the G.I. Joe, what I call dolly pilots. They are hollow cast resin. So what that means, they're made kind of like chocolate Easter bunnies. They're put in a rotocasting machine and tumbled in a way that it coats the resin around the inside of the mold, and it's hollow. So my 1/5 scale pilots, they come in right at 4 ounces, 4.5 at most, and that's doggone light. So
yeah,
it's a lot lighter than G.I. Joe pilots, which run around 8 ounces if they're done like a Ken doll or Barbie doll or that kind of thing.
There you go. I know a lot of planes, the pilot sits behind the CG too, so that helps too.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. So being a pilot myself, I know I wanted to keep them as light as possible. So
definitely. I know I sound like I'm prepared with a bunch of questions. I am.
You were prepared.
I am. Definitely.
And he emailed them to Lyle so that Lyle could be prepared. And I said, "What the hell are you doing? How are we supposed to stump him if you send him what questions we're going to ask him?"
Chad, you're the stump and chump guy.
I just like to throw in odd comments to try and get him off pace so that he can't just read off a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Throw one. I thought Chad, somebody just came in.
Oh, no.
I needed another drink.
He's got a runner? He's got an alcohol runner. Oh, my gosh.
Hey,
when you're as famous
I'm
as
so
me,
impressed.
You have people for that,
Chad has people.
Yeah, we'll say that. No, I already talked about all the stuff I wanted to ask him. I didn't care about his pilots. I just cared about his personal stuff.
What about Fond du Lac?
Oh, yeah. I got this. We'll get off of the pre-scripted stuff. And how long do you say your P-51 formation flights are with Steve?
Oh, we fly around 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
You mean length of time we're in the air?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
We had, and you're going to love this, we had, both Lee and I had people come up to us complaining about how much you guys were flying at Fond du Lac.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, people get butthurt over that. It's amazing.
But
we were flying too much.
Yeah. Well, and to go along with that, we had, when I was working for Balsa USA, we had somebody come up and complain because Balsa USA was flying too much. When we stand in line just like the rest of it, just like you were doing, just because you go up in line more often than somebody else doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that.
No, we always try to make sure that, sometimes we go to air shows and they want us to fly all alone, and we don't ever want to do that because we don't want to take away flying. We love to fly, and you see us guys, we're usually some of the first ones up, and last ones down throughout the day, and we don't get a chance to fly together that much. So whenever we go to an air show, man, we're hitting it, and we're on the flight line, and I say if they don't like that, they need to get up there and fly themselves more. Just get in line like the rest of us.
It's funny because, they came to me and was complaining about you guys flying. I had a 54-minute flight or something like that, one of my flights, because I was seeing how long I could fly for. And they didn't say one thing about that, but, I'm Chad Osmus, so that's enough right there. I can do whatever the hell I want to do.
I don't think Steve and I got to fly quite as much as we have sometimes in the past, because we had other buddies there that we were helping spot. That's because there's people
flying 54 minutes.
Yeah. Damn air hogs.
Now you're going to be paranoid every time you go up to fly at Fond du Lac, thinking people are judging you.
I would just fly more now.
Excellent.
Okay.
Good answer. Good answer.
We were even flying after everybody quit. A couple when they had the banquet and that kind of thing. I mean, we weren't anybody's way then, so I don't know. That's funny.
Don't let it bother you.
Oh no, I'm good.
I'm sure the people complaining aren't listening to this podcast anyway, so.
Only real pilots,
take a joke.
the real flyers listen to this podcast.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which brings me to another thing. This was actually my first year really getting to know you. I met you at the Sturgeon Invitational thing with Steve. And I think I called Steve you or you Steve, something like that. I forget what it was, but along with that, because I've known you for so long now, almost like 6 months, I feel I deserve
your whole product line too.
I feel I deserve a free shirt and a hat because I don't own any of your products. I intend to, I swear, but just because I'm allowing you to associate with me, I mean. So, and I'm sure you get that a lot. I got that a lot with what I was doing. Everybody wanted something for free, even though they don't fly any of your stuff anyways. So. Yeah,
I always kind of try to keep it at least you have to be a customer to get the T-shirt. That's for sure. So, for the free
that counts
shirt,
me out. Maybe now that I can branch out from my World War I stuff, I can get some of your stuff. So.
Well, Chad, it only took me like 6 pilots to get it.
Well.
Yeah, I hope so.
It's you, Lee.
I know. This is true.
Yeah. Well, and to be perfectly honest with you, there was political reasons why I didn't have any of his stuff, just because of who I dealt with where I worked, which now I don't have that issue. So.
Okay, cool. Well, hopefully we'll be branching out a little bit more with the product line, because I've taken the step of delving into actual 3D modeling on the computer as opposed to sculpting them in clay. So and so far so good. It's turned out pretty good. I'll have to send you guys some pictures when we're done of my first 3D sculpt in the computer, and haven't got one printed out yet. Hopefully, keep my fingers crossed that will be able to happen. But so far so good. So I'll be able to do those a little bit faster.
You planning on doing any third scale stuff at all? I know that's been one of the big issues, and I contacted you once before when I was doing my Newport about getting a third scale one from you, but
I think if I go third scale, and for the resin, I will have to only do like a head and shoulders. I don't think a full body pilot. I think it'll get too heavy, because even though the fifth scale pilots are really, really light, as you go larger, the amount of resin they use goes up exponentially, because you need thicker walls for the bigger structure. And I don't know what that weight would arrive at.
Yeah, I don't know what your fifth scale ones are weighing in at, but I mean, it's not odd to have it's not odd to have a pound pilot in a third scale airplane.
Yeah,
that's when he was getting a drink.
Yeah, it was. No, he was texting me getting a drink.
Yeah, well, but I mean, we had pilots that were over a pound, and it's not odd for a third scale pilot to be that heavy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, if we're in that ballpark, that would be fine, because my fourth scale pilot, Lothar von Richthofen, he is just under a pound, and keep lightening him up as much as possible. But I don't know. I just don't. That seems heavy to me because I fly mostly fifth scale. But that's.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my Newport, I could fit a 10-pound pilot in it and it'd fly fine still.
Oh yeah.
And the reason I ask is I'm doing a third scale plane, the Tri-Pacer, you know, and it'd be great to have some pilots, you know, but it's tough to buy your pilots when you don't make one big enough for me. Fifth scale. That's like the park flyer stuff, right? That fifth scale stuff.
Well, that's another neat aspect about doing the sculptures and that, and creating the pilots in the 3D digital space, is that you'll be able to scale them up and down. So if I get one that I like and we print it out in fifth scale, should be able to scale it up to hit the other scales as well. So we'll see as we go down that road.
Well, Chad, you can just use one of his fifth scale pilots and say, I'm flying your third scale airplane, and it'll be perfectly scaled out.
There we go. Yeah.
Lee is third scale in real life.
That's right.
Yeah. You know, on that note, our family, my boys and me, not Becky because she refuses to weigh herself in front of us, but I weighed myself today. I'm up to 276 pounds, man.
Wow.
All right.
No, that's not all right. Oh, yeah, definitely all muscle. You know, why do I have knee problems? I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm fat and lazy.
Well, you said round is a shape. You got in shape.
It is, yeah.
You need to talk to Opie.
Yeah, why is that?
Remember Opie at Fond du Lac? He lost a ton of weight. We didn't know who he was. Remember that?
Yeah, definitely.
You know, another person, do you guys know Paul Restridge?
Yep.
I don't know Paul, no.
Oh, that guy lost a lot of weight this last year.
Oh, there are a lot of pilots out there that have Paul Letourneau. He lost quite a bit of weight, too. 10, 11.
Well, he's crazy. I mean, the guy runs like a marathon every morning.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? It makes me tired. You know, he had a plane go in at St. Charles a year or two ago, and it started the corn on fire because it crashed out in the cornfield.
Oh, no.
You know, I won't get into why it crashed and all that stuff, but needless to say, there was a fire. So I grabbed the fire extinguisher, and I ran out there. And I get about halfway, and all I can think is, please don't fall out before you hit the corn. You can fall in the corn. People won't realize. You know, I'm tired as hell. And he's running in flip-flops. And he gets to the plane, and he's jumping up and down because he emptied a fire extinguisher. I had just made it to the corn. I was like, are you kidding me? And he's wearing flip-flops running through the corn. And he started running after me, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Start calling him the Flash.
Man,
Yeah.
it was crazy. There was a bunch of us pilots that ran out there to help him out, and we basically just threw the fire extinguishers at him because we couldn't even breathe by the time we got to the corn.
Exactly. Thank God the corn was high.
Oh, yeah. Man. It was
Little did we know, RC pilots, it's good to be in shape. You need to be in shape even to fly RC, huh?
Yeah.
Comes in handy.
Either that or know somebody that's in shape.
Have a fit spotter.
Well, hey, Lyle, you touched on something, 3D printing and stuff like that. I know you do a pilot that looks like you. You kind of feature that. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Okay. There is a company that I saw on the Today Show. They're called That'sMyFace.com. They're based out in Oregon. And they were taking photos that people submit of themselves. Essentially, you just take it with your cell phone and email it to them. And they will generate, it's done automatically, the first draft is, of your face, and it's done in 3D. They do a 3D sculpt of that automatically. I looked into that and talked to them, and they could resize things a little bit to make sure that they fit perfectly inside my pilot figures. And so we started up a relationship, and I think we've done around 200 of those now, of different ones with the actual faces of either people would do like a tribute to their grandfathers who fought in World War II, flew in World War II, or their hero, or for specific aircraft that they fly, like you did, Lee.
Yeah.
We've also had a few of them that have gone into museum pieces where it was a diorama of an actual pilot and it's pilot's aircraft, and they had to have that actual pilot's face in there too. And the cool thing is, it is actually their face. It's their photograph, and it's actually printed in 3 dimensions, in full color, in their process. And I've never. There's only a few other places that can do that in the world. And I've been able to hook up with the that'smyface.com and get it done, and they're great to work with, and works out good.
It turns out super nice. The one I did was Donald Runyon had to do for me for my Wildcat. Yeah. And that turned out really nice.
It's a nice touch at the end. I mean, just to have that actual person in a plane. I mean, to me, that's a lot of what scale is about. Is always kind of another reason I got into the pilot making is because that's always been a pet peeve of mine. Is you see a great looking aircraft fly by, and it's of the Red Baron, or it's of Donald Runyon or Eddie Rickenbacker or anybody, and then you got one of those old Williams Brothers pilots in there. And they kind of look alien or something, and it kind of kills the whole illusion that you're trying to, or the story you're trying to tell with your aircraft. So to have the actual realistic looking pilot that looks as real as the aircraft, that's been my goal all along. So,
well, I've seen some of the pilots Lee's made, like the one in his D7.
Yeah.
If you ever need some help, you need to get Lee in your shop.
There you go.
And matter of fact, Chuck Hamilton really loves that pilot, from what I understand.
He does. That's his Christmas present this year.
Your first one, it was a little rough. It kind of looked like, was it a bar of soap or zucchini? But other than that,
did you make more than one, Lee?
No. So my second one was just as rough as my first one because I used the same guy.
Well, what was the one? The one you sent me though, we painted up.
No, that was actually a 3D printed one that I did.
Okay, well that was pretty good actually. Look really
there
good.
You go. I didn't sculpt that.
Yeah,
you're
giving Lee way too much credit, man.
Okay, man. I was so impressed. Now I don't know, Lee.
I know it.
What's the rough cost difference from a stock pilot that you already have on your website versus the make a pilot look like me type of thing?
The pilot, the heads on those pilots are right at $80 for just the head for those. Mm-hmm. So then you add in the painted one, they run around close to $3, I think it is, on those. So yeah, it's a little bit pricey deal, but really that's the cheapest way that you can get that I know of, that you can arrive at an actual person or a face as opposed to sculpting one out or anything like that.
Oh, it's cheaper than buying a pilot for your jet. That's for damn sure.
Really?
I mean, some of them guys, they're paying like $500-600 for a pilot.
Man, I got to go back and reprice some of my stuff.
Yeah, like the I don't know, the perfect pilots. I mean, those things are crazy expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, they look good.
I know a really super nice person down in Australia. I don't know if you remember Patty's Pilots. Yep. And she had some going on down there, and I was just amazed at the work that she was putting into it. But my goodness, she was doing 3D sculpts of the heads. They were doing molds of each one, and then her and her daughter were doing all the fabric and everything. And I can't sew a button on.
I was actually in the sewing club in 7th grade, so great place to meet girls.
Yeah, home ec class in high school, sewing benches, No.
Yeah, I made a mean placemat, man.
Yeah, that's why I had to go clay. Sculpt mine out.
There you go.
Her stuff looked great and everything, but she said she just worked herself in the dirt. I mean, just trying to keep up with orders, and it was crazy. It's just too many hours. I've got a lot of hours of mine, but that was above and beyond. I think. But for me, one thing I don't like, and hers looked really well, but for what I don't like about a lot of the dolly pilots are the clothes and the material just doesn't scale down well. So they look way too puffy.
Yes.
They kind of look Michelin Man like in the cockpits. And then they're also a little bit floppy on the floppy side. And yes, you can pose them any way you want, but they don't stay there unless you really wire everything down. So a lot of times you'll see guys come in, their pilots, and their pilots look like they're slumped down in the cockpit or, things like that. Their arms flopped up in the air. That's what I like about with my pilots. They're going to look, they have that scale kind of pose where they're kind of hunched over just a little bit. They're not ramrod straight in the cockpit. and they look like they're really intent on flying aircraft and piloting. So,
have you ever seen the pilot in the back of Lee's Stuka?
Yeah.
The one that flops around looks like he's having a seizure.
What he did? He put it on a spring or something?
Maybe.
I don't think he even glued it in. I think it's just set in there.
Looks like that.
Hey, there's some things I forgot to do before I glued the canopy down.
I mean, it's a good thing there's a canopy on there.
Maybe he just knows Lee's the pilot, and he's wanting out.
Yeah, he probably does. Well, he had you and Steve on his butt last year.
Well, as soon as he climbed in the damn airplane, he'd see how beat up it was.
Exactly.
That old Stuka, I love that thing, man. You fly that thing great. You
I'll tell you what, that thing flies so nice.
It's a great bird.
Yeah, it is. Well, also Rolly planes are, I think.
Yeah.
That
one, your Stuka, Lee, has the different wing from Dynamic Balsa, right?
It's a foam wing, sheeted in fiberglass. I believe it was from Dynamic Balsa. I couldn't really say for sure it is, but that's one thing that has surprised me is how well that thing has actually held up, the amount of abuse that I've given it.
Well, and it seems to fly way better than all the other ones. I mean, like Hot Rod Tods and all that stuff. Even John Cease, happy birthday, John Cease.
Oh, yeah, happy birthday, John.
Hey, John.
Even his Stuka doesn't seem to fly as slow, have the same envelope of flight that yours does.
Well, you know why? His is electric.
Yeah, and he probably spared a little bit of weight by having to glue his pilots in.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there's low glue weight. Low glue weight there.
Yeah. It's half the CG and everything. Yeah, I would just throw it out everything off.
I hear you.
The extra mile.
Exactly. Exactly. Hey, Lyle, what scale pilots do you offer?
I have 1/8 scale, and those are bomber pilots. I have 1/5 scale, and those are the Bob Sweeney, Pappy Boynton, Saburo Sakai, Gunther Rahl, and Sailor Milan, the RAF pilot. And then I have the quarter scale Lothar von Richthofen.
There you go.
You get a lot of people buying your quarter scale one?
Do I have a lot of people buying them?
Yeah.
Yeah. I should probably around 50, 60 a year, something like that.
All right. I actually have a question later on where a guy is asking about putting one in his quarter scale DR1 and stuff like that. So
okay,
that's why I asked that. Yeah.
Interesting thing on the Lothar von Richthofen. When I started sculpting that pilot, I found really some neat photos of Lothar that I hadn't seen before, and I pulled those pictures off I forget what website that was, Picasso or something like that, and used those for the images. And they came in so handy. I wrote to the person that posted them, and I just happened to notice that the person's handle or their call sign on that page was von Richthofen, and I didn't really think it was a family member, but anyway, sent them a thank you. And come to find out, it was a family member, and it was the great-great-granddaughter of Lothar von Richthofen. Nice. And I said, you may be interested in what I'm doing here, may not, but thanks so much for your photos. Here's what it helped make. And she goes, oh my gosh, she was over in Germany at that time. She showed the rest of the von Richthofen family, and they were really thrilled with the fact that I did Lothar instead of Manfred. Manfred, the Red Baron, he gets all the press, but he didn't have any children, so all the descendants are from Lothar. So they were really happy that we did Lothar. So, and her and I, we actually got to meet in Colorado at Warbirds of the Rockies. She's now living in Denver, and we got to meet up there and just had a great time talking history and some insights she had on the von Richthofen family and the whole thing. So it was really, really a neat highlight for the summer to meet her, an actual von Richthofen.
Yeah, there you go. Definitely. I know on a personal side, I know you're working on other pilots and whatnot. The only reason I say that is because I know I've already ordered 3 of them that aren't done yet.
What?
We had this conversation a while back. You was going to be making another pilot, quarter scale.
Oh, yes.
And it might be for a project that I'm working on right now.
Right, okay.
Or been working on.
Huh, let me guess what that is.
Pre-ordered.
Yeah.
Put a marker in for one. Yes.
Well,
I'd take his money.
Yeah.
Well,
on that, or
that will depend on how the 3D printing and that goes.
okay.
Yeah, I kind of got into a logistical problem, and the issue was I have a full-time job, so I work 40 hours a week, and so when I come home at night, I do the pilots, and then that can range anywhere from 2 hours to 5 to 6 hours every evening, and that's fulfilling orders. So it got to the point where I had enough of a selection that I'm filling orders all the time instead of making new pilots. But I do have a job where they're very supportive of my side hobby, which is cool. They let me ship the pilots out of there and things. And anyway, I run a digital press, and there's some downtime with that with big runs. So when that happens, I can do a little sculpting on the computer there on the side. So
Excellent.
Anyway, I've got that. That's where I hope to make up a little bit of a few more pilots, maybe that way. And like I say, if I get one that's in a good shape and looks good the way we want it, then scaling it up and down, then we should be able to hit that quarter scale for you.
Excellent. Are you planning on offering any services where you're sculpting a specific one-off type deal?
I've been asked that quite a bit, but as you know, we talked about, it takes 100 hours to sculpt one. Mm-hmm. That gets into a very expensive pilot. I would love. There's been some really cool projects I've been involved with that I did through That's My Face, where we did the actual test pilot of the Sea Dart in quarter scale. We did the head quarter scale, and did that one. We've done the Red Baron's actual face that went into a 65% Fokker triplane for Bill Holland down in Tulsa. Good buddy. He's a lot of the Top Gun guys know him. And that big triplane, big red triplane of his is making the rounds on all the media right now too. You may have seen some pictures of it. Oh, yeah. But that's the head we did for him. And his wife did the rest of the body and everything. She did the fabric and all that stuff. So
I was talking to him about that plane. He's done some crazy stuff on that. I mean, he's got wire trailing edges and everything for the wings.
Oh, it's monstrous.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I can't wait to see it. It hasn't worked out where we got together to get to see the thing fly this summer, but hopefully next season we'll get to see that one go. I think he's been aiming to come up to Steve's at Sturgeon, so hopefully he makes it this year. That'd be awesome.
That'd be cool.
It would, yeah.
Bill's a hoot.
Are you planning on going down to Sturgeon this year, Chad?
Man, I don't know. I just lost my job, dude. Money's a little tight right now. I'm not gonna lie.
I hear you.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It all depends. It was a fun one. Now that I get to pick every single show I go to, that was definitely a fun one that I went to. So that would definitely be high on the list. So. And
I don't think you can find a better grass strip to fly off of.
Oh no, it was amazing.
That grass, it's unbelievable. I mean, a lot of people say theirs is putting green, but that one is about the closest to a real actual putting green that I've ever flown off of.
I know. The first time I went down there, it was like, you got to be kidding me. This is a golf course, you know.
Well, Steve, he has started from scratch and has learned so much about. I mean, he's gotten to be buddies with the greenskeeper for MU Golf Club, for the Missouri State University, golf club, and that guy, he and Steve are good friends now, and he's learned a lot of tricks from that, how to keep grass growing, and you can tell it.
Definitely. Well, when he went out there and mowed, and then he was out there with a broom and everything else, sweeping it off in the morning, I was like, what is he doing? You know.
He's the grass whisperer.
Yes.
So.
You got any more questions, Lee?
Other than the ones that were submitted, that was about it.
Did you ask about the civilian pilots?
No, I figured they'd give that to you.
Oh.
Okay.
Do you make any civilian pilots?
No.
Why don't you make any civilian pilots or sport pilots, something like that?
I've just been more. No, it's more fun to do the Warbird guys, I guess. I don't have a problem with doing the civilian pilots. Just got into the Warbird niche, and that's what I like doing. And I've learned so much about that seems to be a good area to do it. Interesting thing about doing a civilian pilot is like what kind of pilot would you do, and how would you make it personable but yet not mannequin-like? You know, the Warbird guys, you've got certain personalities you can go for and do. Civilian, doesn't seem like it has that kind of pizzazz to me or something, but I don't know. Maybe do a Harrison Ford or somebody like that. But then you got to watch out about copyright or was it any issues like that. So
yeah. Well, you could always make one of Lee and I. Those would sell like hotcakes.
There we go.
You can sell all three of them.
Maybe I'll contract you to make the pilot look like you thing that you do with the 3D printing that other company you're talking about for the Tri-Pacer, Lee.
There you go.
You and I can be pilots of the Tri-Pacer.
Okay.
Plane probably won't last long.
Some guys that want half-scale pilots or whatever, things like that, I always say, no, I don't supply pilots for that, but have you considered adoption?
There you go.
I think there's some kind of legality issues with doing it.
Can you hear us now?
Yep, I got you now.
All right. That'll work.
All right. That's right. That last part wasn't important anyway, so.
There you go.
All right.
So I got, before we move on, there was a bunch of people that had specific questions just for you in our Ask Questions thing,
Oh, wow.
the Freedom of Information Act, as we call it. So I want to go over those right now and not save those till the end, just in case you got to get going, because sometimes the shows get a little long. But so the first one is from Debbie Howe. Do you know the Howes?
Yes.
John and Debbie?
Yep.
Were you there when John flew Lee's plane into the ground before he realized that it was Debbie's?
Yeah, I was there.
That was hilarious. I'm sorry, Debbie, but it was great. It was spectacular. I don't know how you how do you mistake a P-47 and a Stuka, but I guess that's what happens when you're working with Pet G.
Yes. It's very fragile stuff.
But anyways, she has asked, any hints on painting the vinyl pilots versus 3D printed pilots? Would you use the same type of paint? What type of paint? And will you get the same effects?
Let's see. The vinyl pilots, any paint at all is going to be hard to stick on vinyl because nothing likes to stick to vinyl. But I guess enamels will do about as best as anything. But if they flex, it's going to crack. Could try maybe artist acrylics. And that's a whole different ballgame than the technique I use. And then as far as the 3D pilots go, the same technique I use on my pilots, they work pretty good, as which we showed on the one that I did for Lee with his 3D.
Yeah, Lee, you'll have to get me a picture of that we can put up so people can see that.
Okay. Yeah, I did.
Yep. Just as a side note on the way I paint the pilots, the painted pilots, they take me about 4.5 hours to do, maybe 5, depends. But
did you say it was like 5 with depends on?
Yes, depending on how many beers I have.
All right.
There's a tight deadline, slap on the depends, and go. You know.
All right.
But I guess that was Lee's way of telling you to shut the hell up.
I'd never do that.
But now
I'll let you keep going, though.
Generally, I try to keep it around 4.5 hours is what it takes to paint a pilot. And each one has a base coat, has a shadow wash coat, and then a dry brush effect. And then lately, I've just discovered a little trick that I use right at the end. I dust them with powder, artist powder. It's kind of like a light gray or a light yellow gray, and dust that on there. And then when I spray the lacquer dull coat over that, it just melts that into melts it into the paint and gives it real subtle highlighting that you just can't achieve elsewhere. And it's fast and easy to do, and it's something extra that I think my customers will really appreciate and notice.
Have you ever, this isn't a viewer question, this is just mine that I thought of right now. Have you ever thought of doing a little tutorial, a video tutorial on how you paint your pilots?
Yeah.
Or is that like trade secrets?
No, I don't have any problem sharing that because it helps. I actually do better money-wise, time-wise than that if I sell unpainted pilots, which I do. Mm-hmm. I've got several customers that they don't even use them for RC. They use them for display purposes. I have one guy that does scale cockpits of aircraft, 1/5 scale cockpits. He does all the levers and everything, and he likes to put my pilots in them since they look so real. So that
seems boring.
Display them on. But yeah, a lot of guys like to paint them up. So that's a whole industry in itself. It looks like.
And that's a nice thing on your pilots too. That it's got so much detail in there. It's actually very easy to paint them to get a realistic look at them.
Yeah, well, that kind of goes back to Debbie's question. Is the technique in that since I know I'm going to be painting my own pilots, I know where to put the detail in. That's going to help you make things pop. So, like the edge of a coat, I'll make the lip of the coat kind of turn up a little bit. So that's going to catch a brush when you dry brush it. So it's going to give just a little bit of highlight there, and let the sculpture do the work for you. Whereas a pilot doesn't have a lot of detail in it, that's not going to come across that well. If you do any dry brushing, it's not going to do anything because there's nothing there to pick up the paint.
Exactly. Kind of like having panel lines and rivets on an airplane.
Yeah, same thing. Same process. It's all.
So it's probably a waste of time for me to dry brush my Williams brother bust up pilots.
Yeah.
I tell you what, you can't beat a pilot for $6 though, right?
That's true. The guys that are happy with $6 pilots, that's great because they're not going to see or notice the difference with mine or want to pay for that. So that's cool. It fills its own customer base there.
All right. The next question is from Charles Brooks. Would like to know what paint they use. So what paints do you use when you're painting your pilots?
I use Testors Model Masters acrylics, basically.
Is that the water-soluble stuff?
Yep. I use all water-soluble paints. Yeah.
Water-soluble stuff is so much nicer.
Oh, that's awesome.
I started painting my planes in latex.
I thin mine down a lot with Windex. Because Windex thins down acrylic, and I use that as a thinner, and that helps the paint goes on, especially with all the detail I have on my pilots, that goes into all the nooks and crannies a lot easier. Doesn't have a lot of paint buildup or get gummy or anything. Extends the life of the paint a little bit. And of course, Windex is cheap.
Yep. Well, and I paint a lot of my planes with latex paint, and I use blue windshield washer fluid, the cheap blue windshield washer fluid. It's got a little bit of alcohol in it, so it evaporates out super quick.
Oh, yeah?
It works great.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of painting airplanes or model airplanes with latex. It's awesome.
That's all mine are.
All right. The next question, and some of these you kind of touched on a little bit, but I'm just going to ask them. Steve Merrill, I think that's how you pronounce his last name.
Yep.
He wants tips on painting pilots. What type of paint do you use? You just talked about that. Do you mask your colors off, and just general how-to?
I don't mask them off. Everything's free-handed. Just real quick, the way I do the faces, that's the most important part. I hit that with an airbrush of a real light skin tone. I mean, it's almost like a real light tan. Then I use ground artist pastels, like a rust color, and I dust that on, kind of like, dare I say, makeup. Lee knows about that. But
oh, yeah. Only after 10 o'clock.
I dust that on, and it kind of goes in. It kind of darkens in the around the nose, under the nostrils, and any wrinkles and things like that. Gives that detail there. Gives that pop. Then use what they call burnt umber, which is kind of a dark brown. Brush that on to give the guys a little bit of 5 o'clock shadow. And, it varies depending on how surly you want your pilot to look. Put it on real heavy and look like a lumberjack, or lighten it up and looks like they're clean shaven. So you got that. And then I hit that with dull coat, Tester's dull coat, and that locks in your pastels. And it's in there, man. You don't have to worry about it. I always thought pastels wouldn't be very durable, but they prove to be very tough pigment. Then after that, like when you do a leather coat, I paint that flat black first, and then dry brush that with a rust color. and dry brush a little bit of Windex in that with the thin it down, dry brush that over it. Man, it looks like leather, like you wouldn't believe. Works out great. Wouldn't think it would, but it does. Most of the pilots are actually base coated in black to begin with anyway, and all of that's dry brushed on, so it gives a lot more depth to the pilots. Once that's done with the dry brushing, or I do a wash over that, so then even the all the recesses and all the seams and things like that get a coat of black in there that runs into the black. Use Tilex shower spray is one of my secret ingredients. Not so secret now, but what that does, it takes out all the water tension. And you might try that with a latex sometime to see if you want to really get a real flat finish, because it makes it super, super runny. So it's good for washes and things like that. You want to really scale oil effect or something. Put a little Tilex in with your oily wash that you want to make a plane look like it's greasy and drippy and things like that around the engine nacelles. Works out good.
I'll have to talk to you about that after this.
Yeah, it will kill water tension like crazy.
Lee, you got the show notes with you?
Yeah.
You want to ask them questions 4 and 5? I have to go for a sec.
All right, not a problem.
Cool.
The next one is from Alan Hinton, and it was regarding the face that looks like you option that you offer. He says he bears a strong resemblance to a bearded Viking from the days of yore. How can Best Pilot help me incorporate my image onto an acceptable scale pilot figure for my Top Flight 0?
Let's see. I think beards and hair actually are a little bit of a problem with the That's My Face grip, because it is not. It's going to look more clumpy than it is actual hair, and I have never done a bearded fellow pilot yet. So that would be something we could try. We would probably have to start with a photo of you and with the beard, and then if it's a very prominent beard like ZZ Top or something, I'll probably go in with Milliput sculpting clay and add that beard onto your head after we get it, and color that in. Now, I've done that before with women, not bearded women. But
I don't know what part you go to.
That was the Arkansas customers, but no.
Oh, okay.
Might have to cut that one. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
They did in Model Airplane News. They wouldn't put that one in.
You missed a good one, Chad. Sorry, buddy.
But anyway, with the hair on women and stuff, I have to sculpt that because it's just too. The 3D printing on the hair just doesn't look too good. So if I sculpt it, it looks pretty good. It's doable.
Okay.
Next question.
The next one was from Alex Billy. He's building a Don Smith B-17 and want to know if he has suitable crew for a night scale.
Night scale? Yeah, the 1/8 scale pilots, they actually work really well in that. I've sold whole crews. I've had one guy buy the whole crew painted out. It was like $1,500 order, and he did the whole crew for a B-17.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wow. It was nuts. I call it the Westminster crew. I've got a picture of it on my website somewhere. But, yeah, we can do that. Now, interesting thing I've discovered is that scale is actually pretty loosey-goosey in this hobby. A 1/9 scale, 1/8 scale, you're only talking about a difference of around 3%, giving height differences between people. So that should work pretty good. Sometimes it's way off, but most of the time it's going to be in the ballpark. For an example, when you talk about scale in the hobby, I discovered that my Top Flight P-51 ARF, the cockpit on that is quarter scale wide and 1/6 scale long. So that's just kind of what manufacturers have to do sometimes, and scales based on wingspan, and cockpits are just kind of, the hole to fill. And
there you go.
I've also found that having like the next size up or a little bigger pilot makes it look nicer inside your airplane.
Oh yeah. Well, I've had one customer say that, well, my Bob Sweeney in my Top Flight P-47, he's got way too much room around him. Well, have you seen an actual P-47? The actual P-47, you did have a lot of room in there. That was a huge, huge cockpit, as opposed to a Spitfire or Messerschmitt, where the pilots, it was so tight that the pilot could just tilt his head and hit the cockpit sides, hit the glass.
Definitely.
Got to look at your airplanes and stuff. See the scale differences.
For sure. On a side note, me asking, your fifth scale stuff, what size person do you base that on when you're doing your sculpture?
The actual person?
It would be like, would it be like a 6 foot person? 6'3"?
That was a dumb question, Lee.
That's all right. I don't care.
well, let me answer this one for you, Lyle.
Okay.
He's making specific people, Lee, so he's probably using their specific height.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there is such thing as a dumb question.
We found it.
Actually, Bob Sweeney, I think he is around 5'7" or so. So I scaled that to at 5'7" at 20% because that was built specifically for the Top Flight P-47 kit plane that we had. So he is perfect scale for that, but he would be a little bit under 5'7", 5'2" for maybe a true fifth scale.
Yeah, he's still taller than me.
So, yeah.
There's not a whole lot of pilots shorter than you, Lee. There was a height requirement. It's like when you walk into the theme park, the Air Force had the same thing. You have to be above the alligator's head, you know?
Oh, man. Rough crowd.
He's you bring your very own Hobbit to the show.
Well, you guys do. I know that.
Yeah, I know. Johnny D.
There you go. I was waiting to get sucker punched on that one.
All right, I got. Now we go into the Jeremy Chrisman question.
Well, what about 6 and 7?
Well, that's not specifically for him.
Okay.
I mean, you want to just go over all these questions right now?
Might as well. I mean, Lyle does a hell of a job with weathering stuff too. So.
All right, screw it. So, about 15 minutes ago, we started the Freedom of Information Act segment. I guess we ended Lyle's stuff and skipped over all the rest of the stuff. So we'll just throw that in. I guess Adam Klein.
Hey, Chad.
What are your favorite weathering? What?
Just so you know, this is our second one, so we really don't have a routine yet.
But I went in the very beginning of the show. I told them the order we were doing everything.
Yeah, but when do we listen to rules?
Well, I guess.
All right.
That's what I get for trying to be organized.
That'll be the last time that
right.
shit.
Anyways, Adam Klein, what's your favorite weathering technique for your planes, and what do you like to do for insignias? Paint, cut out of covering, or sticky back?
Oh, I'd rather, as for me, on the insignia stuff, I think it always looks better if it's painted. It's more of a paint and a tuchus, but painted just looks better because, then you can weather it down. You know, you can take a steel wool and kind of rub over that buff over it a little bit, take down the edges where the tape lines were, and then it starts to, come off just a little bit. That to me looks more authentic.
Definitely.
As well, so.
Yeah, and with the World War I stuff that I was known for, I would even hand brush my stuff.
Yeah.
I would just make masks, trace it onto my plane, and I would hand brush everything, and I always took the thing of they probably used a 3-inch brush, so if it's a third scale plane, I use a 1-inch brush, going on like that, and that always seemed to work really good. I got a lot of good compliments on my stuff that way.
Oh, so. Sure. I think that adds to it even more.
Well, I think all three of our biggest pet peeves is seeing a plane that was done up in D-Day color scheme where the invasion stripes are perfect, straight lines, perfect.
Yeah, people that mask off their D-Day stripes, I want to fucking wring their neck out. I can't stand it.
Oh, man.
They put them on in the middle of night with push brooms, and I get yelled at if I don't have my D-Day stripes masked off. I don't understand that at all.
I find it interesting that as we've gone into HD, high-definition photographs and things like that, that has upped the game in the hobby, in the scale hobby, because you're able to see those details so much closer than what you could way back when you were just looking in magazines of photos that have been reproduced and reproduced and reproduced. So when you actually see, you can see now when you're really looking at some of those high-definition photos, especially on the web of the D-Day invasion stripes, they were painted on with mops and things like that. And you can see that was not perfect. Steve Forrest did a Pappy Boynton Corsair, and there were some photographs that we found up close of the markings, and you could tell where they used a stencil. They just cut that out of cardboard or something and sprayed it real quick, and it bled underneath that pretty well. So the 883 on Pappy Boynton's Corsair, it's not sharp and clear at all. It's pretty blurry around that. So
well, I was in the military, and I know how we painted all of our stuff on our trucks. I mean, we had holy crap! I got a crazy echo.
Yeah, I got real loud on this end.
Yeah, it did.
Is this better?
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, sorry about that. I'll edit that out.
Don't do that again.
I was in the military. But I know how we painted all that stuff. We just had a paper template, and we held it up and used a rattle can and sprayed it outside in the wind, and I mean it was terrible. And
so that same process back then.
Oh yeah. Sure. And in the middle of the war, they're not going to take the time to make everything perfect. They're worried about getting stuff out.
And I always, some people ask me about weathering, how much is too much weathering or whatever. One, it's definitely a personal preference, and for the most part, go out and make a plane that you're going to like. But my personal preference is, for one, I feel like scale is telling a story. So when you're making an aircraft, you're telling a story about that airplane, that pilot, and all that. And you go out to any flight line, and any of these guys that fly an aircraft, they're going to be able to tell you all the specs on the plane, what it flew and how it flew and everything else. So these guys know that. And to me, weathering an aircraft up, that tells how it flew, the environment it flew in. It looks like it was there. And that's the biggest thrill for me, to see a scale aircraft fly by like Lee's Stuka and his Spitfire that looks just fabulous. And it goes by, and I can imagine myself that being there, and that's what that looked like when that aircraft flew by. That tells a story. So that with a good pilot.
Well, another thing too, it depends on what kind of plane you're representing too. Is it a factory fresh airplane, or is it a plane that's been out in the field, through the summer, through the fall, in like you said, the environment. Did it sit on an aircraft carrier out in the middle of the Pacific for 6 months, floating around and just getting baked by the sun or whatever? So,
well, it's like the old, what was it, the P-40s, where they're Pepto-Bismol pink because the tan in the desert would fade to the pink,
Yeah.
I had a pink and baby blue P-40.
I'm not going anywhere, Ken.
It was a foam one too. That was the best part.
Nice.
I'm just going to tell a story right away with it. I bought it from a friend of mine, Tony Lewis. You know Tony, right?
Yep. I do.
I bought it from him back when we were in high school, and I flew a thing for a physics class or something like that. And I flew that plane at my high school for a physics class, took off on the sidewalk and landed on the sidewalk. So everybody was wondering why I had a pink plane, and I had to try and explain it. And nobody believed me. They thought it was my sister's, and it just went downhill from there.
And actually up in Kalamazoo Air Museum actually has one that's painted up as that. So they got that hanging up in the front foyer.
There's one that comes to EAA too, and I don't know if it's I want to say it's a female who owns it, and I've seen it a couple times at EAA, the Air Venture.
Yep.
And I don't know if she does a routine with it or what she does, but she's got it painted up pink and baby blue, and I think that was the one that Tony modeled the one that I bought from him after.
There you go. Well, I know the one in Kalamazoo used to fly, but it's been hanging up ever since. They basically lost their insurance for flying any of their stuff, or most of their stuff anyway. So,
when I did my B-25 and weathered it up, one of the things that I saw a World War II actual color photo of one flying, and the exhaust was real tan around that, where the exhaust actually got so hot it turned olive drab to tan. So I wanted to, that's what I was going for. I wanted to show that. And that's the way I portrayed it. And then, of course, you know, when you do the weathering, it's like, is it too much? Is it too little or whatever? And, you know, for that, just go to your reference. But the payoff for that was at an air show one time, this guy comes up and says, I used to fly one of those in the war. And he said, when your pilot in your model right there, he must have been a hot shot. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, the hot shot pilots, they are the ones that knew how to fly the plane and lean the engines out just right to get maximum performance, because when they did that, they had the tan exhaust. So you knew the planes that that had the tan exhaust, those were the guys that'll get you home. So you had to do the same settings as they did. So that was kind of cool. So it kind of came around full circle there, that you did something, you don't know why you did it, but it looked cool. You had evidence of it, and then you had somebody come along that actually was there and back it up and notice it. That was pretty cool.
There you go. And one thing I've noticed too on weathering, sometimes you can be overdone. Mm-hmm. It's better to sneak up and go underneath what you think it should be. You can always add more to it if you find out you don't like what you see.
Yep.
Yeah, it's harder to take it away than to add to it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely subtlety, and I always find too, being an artist, a slight gradient of anything, like an exhaust or whatever. If you just put it on full blast and it doesn't really fade out real nice, it just looks like you're more of a master of your paint if you can get that gradient going and just let it fade out real subtly. And that always tends to attract attention for whatever reason to the eye than rather a flat color. So always work for that subtle change or a light change or dark change or whatever.
That and the solid colors like black and white. You don't definitely use pure black or pure white.
Oh, yeah. Unless it's the no-see-em, unless I got a spark plug or something like that sticking out on the bottom, paint that black. Black's like the no-see-em color. But, no, when you're going for scale and it actually has black markings, don't use black. Muddy it up a little bit. Makes it look like it's a bigger airplane.
There you go. So.
All right. We'll get off that question because that took way too long. That was like a 20-minute question.
Oh, man, that could be a whole show.
Oh, yeah. It could be.
Chuck involved.
There you go.
I wasn't going to say it.
Chuck knows his color. I admire Chuck's knowledge base on that. He knows what he's talking about.
There you go.
Let's move on. Number 7, Jeremy Chrisman.
Oh, boy.
This guy, I tell you what, and I'm going to give you the backstory because he's got 12 questions, just him.
Okay.
And he always asks Lee and I questions. He was one of the first ones to ask questions for the last show when we first did the last show, and I noticed he didn't put any questions, so I messaged him on Facebook, said, hey, we're doing a show today. I got like 3 hours before we're recording. Do you have any questions? I noticed he didn't put any questions. And he started giving me this whole spiel about, I'm so tired. I was flying on an airplane. The guy's in the Air Force.
Air Force.
And he gets tired flying on a damn airplane. So, but anyway, so he made up by sending me 12 questions. My phone didn't shut up for that whole 3 hours before the show. So we'll get started with all of his questions.
Hey, Chad, should we tag team these? You do the odds and I'll do the evens?
Sure. Yeah. What's an odd number?
That'd be like
no,
1.
I'm kidding.
Skip 1. That'd be 3.
All right. With a drastic difference in price, $235 versus $95, would you recommend buying a painted or unpainted Best Pilot? And I'm going to answer this. I have seen his painted pilots, and they are phenomenal. And he's probably going to hate me for telling you to say buy a painted pilot after hearing he has to do this after work. But I can guarantee I can't paint a pilot as good as him. I'm sure Lee can't paint a pilot as good as him. So I would pay the extra money and get a painted pilot from him if I was buying a pilot from him. Not that I buy his pilots because, you know.
It's a Chad boycott.
Well, he's only got $6, Lyle.
I know.
He doesn't make big enough pilots for me. That's the problem.
We'll see how sales increase dramatically with this, and maybe we can work out a deal with the podcast. No, I'd have to agree with you, Chad. I mean, when you really stop and think about it, it takes 4 or 5 hours to paint one. So time is money, and someone that doesn't paint a couple hundred of them a year, they're going to be slower than that. So you're going to spend more time doing it. It also takes about $40 at least in materials and brushes, paints, that kind of stuff to get the materials you need to paint one like I do as well. So, yeah, even though it would probably cost me more of my own time, and I can't get to the PBY Catalina and finish it up because of the pilot business, but that's okay. But, yeah, I would say a painted pilot is probably actually a good deal when you stop and think about it.
Well, I just quick did the math with the numbers you shouted out. $235 minus the $95, which is what you pay for just an unpainted pilot, and then minus $40 is
$65 for that one.
Oh, $65.
You inverted the 9 there, Chad.
Well, in his question it said 95, so I assumed. I mean, like I said, I've never bought one of his pilots. I haven't even been to his website. I didn't even know he had a Facebook page.
This is true.
But, I mean, that's still only like $25 an hour. That you see that? My people just brought me another one. But I mean,
I stopped.
You have any kind of construction done on your house, which I know because I was a contractor. You're paying a hell of a lot more than $25-$30 an hour. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's really a hell of a fucking deal.
My production really went up when I started a sweatshop, but the problem was I was the only employee.
There you go.
Hey, yeah. I got people. Just let me know.
I don't have people.
Let's talk.
I still got my kids living at home, so I can send them down your way for a while. It'll probably cost you more to feed them than what they're going to make you, but.
Oh, how true. Second one of Jeremy's questions was he's leaning towards buying an unpainted pilot to paint over the winter. Have you painted one? If so, how many hours did you have invested?
I'm guessing about 4.
Probably about 4.5, depending.
Yep.
Did you need an airbrush or was it all brushed on? And any kind of certain paint needed? Not paint, pain.
Pain? Does take some pain.
I copy and pasted these, so all these grammatical errors are not me.
If I'm painting it, yes, there will be pain involved. I mean, right there's the evidence.
Yes. Bleed for the hobby.
Yeah.
Which brings us to Safety 101.
Yeah. Wait, we still got more questions.
Oh, yeah.
I think we covered the paints, enamel, water-soluble paints. That's what I use. Testers. Was it Hobby? Was it Model Masters? Model Masters.
Acryls.
Good. Hobby Lobby. And that's what I use. And nothing really special on that. As far as the airbrush, the only part I hate an airbrush like a script servo gear. But if you use the airbrush, the only part I use it on is just the face for the base coat on the face. It gives a little bit of tooth to the texture, and it accepts the pastel really well.
Okay.
Yeah, and my answer would be I would pay him to paint my pilot.
Yes.
I'd have a crap load more than 4 hours into it, and I have painted pilots, and they've looked terrible.
There are some guys out there who do a great job. Hot Rod Todd, he does a great job up in Iowa. He's one of the better pilot painters I've seen, and I'm always impressed with his work. Definitely.
With all the time we're mentioning him, he's going to be expecting some kind of a check from this show or something. Hopefully he doesn't listen. But the chances aren't great that he's not, because we have like 150 followers.
I'll get in touch with him. I'll tell him be sure to listen.
There you go.
All right. Well, that answers that one. On the next one, I kind of brought this up earlier. On the quarter scale Balsa USA birds, he has the SE5A and the DR1. Do you mount the entire pilot or just waist up? If you do the full body pilot, are modifications required to give the cockpit enough depth to hold the entire pilot? I'll answer this one because I'm probably the most familiar with the Balsa USA airplanes. If you do a full body pilot, you'll have to pull out, they put a wood shelf in basically on top of the fuselage crutch. You just wouldn't put that in, and then you'd have enough room to fit the full body pilot in with a full cockpit. But for quarter scale, most of the people, they're just doing the bust up. So you could just buy one of his pilots. And I don't know if you're willing to paint just the bust up so that they can cut off the rest. Maybe save you like $1, because I wouldn't recommend going any cheaper with the way your prices are right now.
No.
But yeah, I mean, it's all on what you want to do, Jeremy. If you want a full pilot, then make the modifications to put a full pilot in. If you only want the bust up, just cut it off and put the bust up.
I think it's easier too to have the pilot there when you start building it. A lot of times too, because
definitely.
Some guys have a hard time fitting it in there after they've got it built. And also on the Balsa USA's, the cockpit combings don't come out right out to the outside of the fuselage. They don't go to the longerons. Is that right?
Yeah.
On the fuse, they're cut in according to the plans in a little bit, aren't they? Because I made that pilot to a Balsa USA Fokker DR1's fuselage that a friend gave me that met its demise, but he still had the fuselage. So I fit that pilot to that cockpit, and but he had cut that hole out to the scale width all the way out to the outside, so to the longerons. And on the kits, I think some of them don't. They have about a 1/4 inch in, so got a smaller hole.
Yeah, and it depends on the kit, because we did a fairly scale cockpit opening when we designed them. And so yeah, but on most World War I's, the shoulders were below the cockpit combing for the most part on most of them, or very close. So you didn't have a whole lot of the pilot sticking up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always best to have, and I say that with engines and radio equipment and all that extra stuff, have that stuff available when you first start to build. It makes it go a lot easier fitting all that stuff in.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
Nothing worse than trying to reach in and get blind nuts on the back of your firewall because you got it all put together and didn't have the engine handy at the time.
How true. How true. Next one he did. Best pilots can make a pilot looks like the RC pilot, or anyone for that matter. This leaves open some fun options. Chadlee, what famous person, dead or alive, would you have built and paint for your plane? Why that choice? I would have one made up of Trump and paint him with the orange-looking tan. Then I'd glue on a long blonde hair that blows back and hits the person in the back seat. The person in the back seat would be Hillary, and she would be angry with her mouth open, yelling at Trump.
You know, I was reading through his questions before the show, and I was just laughing at my ass off at that. Well, anyways, I would the famous person I would do, and I don't know about you, Lee, but I already discussed it, putting the Chadlee show in the tri-pacer.
I'm saying the same thing, man. We're both famous. Hey, we can get Lyle in the back seat.
and you know, we could have a pilot of Joe made, and he can only do the bust up and have 3/4 of it.
I like it. I'm not.
Do it. I'll call up Dash My Face tomorrow. We'll get the heads printed.
All right. On a side note with the Joe thing there, he did promise me that Joe Vermillion would make the next 2 shows. That way he would make 3/4 of the shows. We had to get that in there for him, so.
Yep.
3/4 of the show, he gets 3/4 of the pilot. That's all.
There you go.
Yep.
Oh,
all right.
On another side note with Joe, we did text him earlier, Lyle, that you do make ARF pilots.
ARF pilots.
Yeah.
Well, pilots for ARFs, yeah.
Oh, no, most of them are.
And already painted, ready to just glue in.
Well, no,
pilots.
his unpainted ones are 3/4 of the way done.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, if you guys could see the look on Lyle's face right now, he is completely lost with this whole conversation.
Threw me off. Some assembly required, I guess. Huh? Almost
there you
ready
go.
to fly, sure.
Right. So, all right. Carry on.
Next question. What size pilot would you use for the Smoothie XL? With the Smoothie XLs that I've done, I've always done a 1/4 scale pilot in them. The Williams brother seems to fit the cockpit properly, but there again, it's a sport plane. You know, put in whatever size works for you. I mean, Lee, you haven't built a Smoothie, have you?
I did not. No.
Lyle, you haven't built a Smoothie, right? All right, so they have no clue what they would use.
Well, if you're saying quarter scale, it sounds like quarter scale Lothar then.
Yeah, well, I like to say, I have never bought any of his pilots, so I don't know how big the quarter scale Lothar is.
Quarter scale he's quarter scale to the real. It's funny to see some of the other manufacturers what they declare as quarter scale pilot, and then you put it against mine. Which what I do is I found out how tall Lothar von Richthofen was. He was 5'11" by all estimates. So you scale that down by a quarter. And then that's what I did on the copy machine, just like scale plans on an airplane, and had a photograph of him standing, reduced it to that scale, and then using calipers and that, built the pilot exactly to that size. So he's actually quarter scale. And what you'll see other manufacturers or pilot guys selling is they may have a quarter scale size head, but the goggles in that will actually be fifth scale because nobody makes quarter scale goggles. So they got little bitty goggles. Or they may have the 8-scale pilots and have really big goggles. So the clothing in that is pretty loosey-goosey. Best pilots, I can say that if it's the scale it is, it's all going to be that scale.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, with that same thing, look at Lee and I. Yeah. I mean, a quarter scale Lee and a quarter scale me would be two completely different sizes.
Oh, yeah. You've got that flexibility in there with just the human dimensions and how everybody's different sizes.
And
so.
Back in World War I and even World War II, people weren't near as big as they are nowadays. Right. When you look at somebody now, I get people, and for example, I'll use an example, my third scale pilot that's in my Newport 17. Somebody said, "Oh, that pilot looks way too small." I said, "Well, who are you basing it against? Me? I mean, I'm a 275-pound person. There's no way I would have been flying in a World War I airplane."
Oh, yeah.
So it's all relative to what you're comparing it to.
Yeah, those guys, most of them are fairly shorter and skinny as rails compared to us today. I mean.
Oh, yeah. There was no 6-foot pilot in World War I can guarantee you that. They went to fit in the plane. I can vouch for that because I can't fit in. I've tried.
Yeah. And then your Japanese pilots were really small. They were like Lee size.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I can verify, too, is even in the plumbing. The bathrooms and kitchens were so much smaller that...
We're not comparing poo size.
No, not poo size, no. Well, I'm just...
An asshole's an asshole. Shit comes out the same diameter.
No, they don't. I guarantee you. I can prove it. I'll get you pictures.
I'm good. I'm good.
Oh, no, he's got pictures. That I didn't need to know.
Those are all going on your timelines next. You're welcome.
I guess I have to block
Damn
me. All right.
Well,
I think you're up for the next one.
Yeah, I am, because you're going to answer this one since you're our Spectrum guy.
Fantastic.
Off-topic question, maybe better for a different podcast.
Nope, we're doing it in this one.
All right, sounds good to me. Did you know...
Fuck.
Whoa.
You remember the last show when I said that I hit the button that drops my seat down with my leg?
Did it again.
And the seat, I just did the same freaking thing.
Nice.
He's going to have to call his people, get him off the floor.
Something like that.
Well, he can't reach his phone then.
All right,
it'll be just like Fond du Lac when you kind of got caught in the chair when we was cooking.
Oh, that's... Did you ever hear that story?
No.
Lyle? So we had our barbecue that I don't think you came to.
He did. We were flying.
He refused to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you were invited, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But you were too good to come and get free shrimp and ribs.
I don't know what happened. I was with a group.
We had enough for the group.
Well, anyways, so Lee and I get up early. We got up at what,
2 o'clock?
2 o'clock in the morning or something to get it going because ribs take a long time to cook. Yeah. And at least if you do it right, anyways, not in a crock pot with like Jeremy Chrisman likes to do it in a crock pot with his electricity. And I mean, I use wood because that's how real men barbecue.
Right.
But so I'm in one of those zero gravity chairs.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about? And
it started to rain.
Yeah, it started to rain, so we come into the tent, in the Balsa USA tent, and I'm sitting on one side, Lee's sitting on the other side, and
we're watching videos.
I'm just about passing out, falling asleep, and I'm like, man, this chair's really leaning back. I'm starting to get super comfortable. I'm almost flat like I'm laying on a bed. The next thing you know, the chair collapses. My head smashes the table behind me, the little cart that all the bins were on, and I'm hurting. I'm all crunched up. I'm damn near licking my belly button because my head's so cramped up into my stomach. And I said, Lee, help me out. He says, oh, no, let me get some pictures first. I want to do a live Facebook video. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm hurting here.
I remember that picture now, yes.
I only did what you would have done to me, Chad.
Yeah, this is true. So yeah, I had to wait for Lee to do his photo op, and I had to talk him out of doing a live Facebook feed while I was cramped up in the chair trying to get out, yeah.
It's awesome footage, though.
It was awesome. It was an awesome picture.
Continuing on with this question now. Did you know that you could bind 2 Spectrum receivers to a radio at the same time? The guy that made this video, evidently he showed you a video or whatever, and the website...
Yeah, he sent me like 20 links.
Did he? All right. Yeah. And the website lost a Hanger 9 Valiant due to a power safe receiver going bad. Is this better than using a power safe receiver?
Well, I looked at it, and there's a couple of different things. 95% of the time, I think the equipment failures are, and I'm not saying that this guy is one of those people, but I would say 95% of the equipment failures or signal loss, stuff like that, is actually operator error. Whether it's they don't realize that they're in a stall, which is why it seems like they lost signal to their airplane, or they just don't have the radio equipment properly installed for vibration, stuff like that. So as far as the power safe receiver going bad, that would be up for debate. I use a lot of them, and I haven't had any crazy issues or anything like that. I did know you can bind 2 Spectrum receivers at the same time, and I do know you can bind 2 of the power safe receivers at the same time, or you can bind 1 power safe and 1, say, 6-channel. They don't have to be the same receivers. Like Futaba, I believe they have to be the same receivers if you're going to be binding 2 receivers at the same time. Where Spectrum, they don't have to be like that. There's advantages and disadvantages. If we made a fail-safe for everything that could go wrong, you'd never be able to build a plane because everything can go wrong. And the more electronics you add into a plane, the more chance of failure you're running into. So the biggest failure point in a radio system is the switch. 90% of any radio failure that is actually mechanical and not pilot error is a switch going bad. And when the switches go bad, they normally go bad in the open position, which turns off your receiver. Whereas a power safe receiver, when it's in the open position, that's when the receiver's on. So if your switch goes bad and opens the circuit, like a fuse, a fuse does, it's all it's going to do is turn on your receiver instead of turn it off. So that's the advantage of the power safe receivers. I personally don't use 2 receivers unless I put 1 up in the wing to run the ailerons and 1 in the fuselage. There's disadvantages to doing that with if you use telemetry. You can only run 1 telemetry at a time. If you use a gyro, which I use gyros, then you either have to have 2 gyros or you have to use single axis gyros on each channel, so you can get some stuff there. But like Paul Eternal, I know he runs 2 receivers, and that started with the whole 72 megahertz days things, and it was just a fail-safe because you lost signal so often with those back in those days. So that was really where the 2 receivers came into play. Today, I don't use them. Some people still do, but then again, some people still use NICADs, and I think that's outdated technology that I don't use either. So it's all on what you feel comfortable with is the biggest thing. I do feel, for the last part of the question, I feel power safe receivers are way better than a regular receiver, especially in the big airplanes. In a smaller airplane, I use regular receivers, but anything that I have a lot of money into, I use Power Safe in them.
There you go.
So, I don't know. Do you fly Futaba, Lyle?
Yeah, Futaba.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you ever bind 2 receivers together?
Yeah, we've got that in our Catalina and our B25.
And what radios are you using? I mean, what
Let's
model?
see, I've got a 10J. Is that right? Yeah. Fairly new when it came out a couple of years ago, using that one.
And I was correct on that, where you have to have the same exact receiver if you're doing 2 for the Futaba, or not?
No, you just bind them.
Yeah.
Because
there are certain instances that you do have to use the exact same one to continue your channel sequence.
And maybe mine was I was using the 18MZ, and you have to select what receiver you have. So if you have like the 8-channel receiver, you actually have to go into the programming and select that you have an 8-channel receiver. Yeah. If you have the 12-channel or 14-channel, I think they have, you have to select that. Yep. I'm not crazy familiar with Futaba, but that was my understanding. And if you have to select it, it never had an option for selecting 2 different ones.
There you go. I know on mine, I had in D7 and DR1, I had two receivers, and I used the same receiver. I do know that for a fact. And the receivers were, I think, the 617s. I even have one laying around here somewhere, but yeah, they were both the exact same one. And
I'm very fortunate. I never had any radio issues with Futaba. 20, 30 years been into flying these things, so pretty good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like anything, and I tell everybody that asks me, what radio do you recommend, especially the new people. Yeah. I just tell them, go out to the flying field and see what they're using at the flying field, because those are going to be the people that are helping you. I'm not going to be helping you when you go out to your local flying field. Yeah. So, I personally use Spectrum radios. I swear by them. I've never had an issue with them. But it's like cars or shoes. You're never going to be perfect 100% of the time.
That's what I love about the hobby. The proof's in the flight line. You want what works? Go to the flight line. Who's flying successfully? Flying all the time? Look what they use. I would imagine they've got it figured out.
Yeah.
But with that same thing, everybody says, 90% of the time or 80% of the time it's Spectrum that's having an issue. Look at the market shares. Spectrum has, I think it's like 85% of the market share. So theoretically, 85% of the failure should be a Spectrum failure.
Oh, yeah.
Just because of that,
Yeah, you got to be careful with the anecdotal evidence as opposed to real statistics.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it is what it is. I mean, they all work, in my opinion. So. Yeah. Use whatever you feel comfortable with.
Remember Don from Don's Hobby Shop out in Salina, Kansas? Don's Hobby Shop he always advertised in all the magazines. He wrote some really nice articles several years ago. He's retired now, but he said the failure rate is really good on this equipment for the most part. He used to work in the Air Force, so he was really into the statistical part of it, and he kind of kept track of his own stuff. And he said, if it's going to fail, it usually is going to do it within the first couple hours of operation. And once you've got something set, it's going to be good. So I always go by that. Gives me hope.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just like I got the new Spectrum, the 20-channel Spectrum that they just came out with. When I got that, everything was on my 18-channel, and I only put one plane on the 20-channel and flew that for the whole summer. That way, it could only ruin one plane if there was an issue. Because, I mean, there's very common. I had a Futaba radio that had a manufacturer defect in it, and I've had plenty of other stuff that's had manufacturer defects. It's a possibility. I'm sure you've had a pilot that has been less than perfect when you've made it. It may not have gone out the door, but I'm sure you've had one.
All pilots leave my hands are perfect.
There you go.
Yeah. So.
I try anyway.
Lee can vouch for the durability of the pilots because his has a seizure every flight. So
he finally smooths out eventually.
That speaks to the
when you run out of gas,
that they can survive in Lee's aircraft in the backseat of the Stuka with no seatbelt. I mean, that's awesome.
It is.
Well, and everybody asked him. He says, oh, your cowl is loose. No, it's not. It's the rest of the airplane that's loose. The cowl is actually not moving.
Exactly. that was something that was very funny this year. I mean, every event I went to, somebody would come up to me just as I'm getting ready to take off. Hey, your cowl's loose. And it's like, yeah, it's been that way for 3 years now.
There's a lot more things you need to worry about than the cowl.
Exactly. That has nothing to worry about.
All right, so we will move to number 7. I see the Best Pilots website. There are tips for painting, scale weathering, insignia, engines, and exhaust. However, is there anything that one should know about before trying to paint a scale pilot?
Get ready to invest about an afternoon at least in doing it. And if you need some tips and tricks or whatever, I'm always available. So you can email me or mostly email me.
I'll put his personal cell phone number in the show notes for you guys.
Didn't do that.
He won't even give it to me. So. With good reason, because I would have put it right out there for everybody.
Yeah. I figured he was going to use that, Chad, or Lyle, to get a shirt and a hat, you know.
Oh, he's always angling on that. Yeah,
I agree.
For sure.
Oh, man.
This is funny. Number 8.
That's me.
You,
it is. How'd I get this? Has Lee ever considered trying to make a scale pilot on his 3D printer, considering the success he had with his airspeed indicator?
Before you start, Lee, I'd like to know where he sees you having success with that airspeed indicator. How many of those did you sell versus giving away?
I gave away probably 4, probably sold about 4. So, we're 50-50.
He gives you a lot of credit.
There you go. But that, all kidding aside, though, that thing, I put that airspeed indicator went on before we went down to Sturgeon. I mean, that was my test.
I tell you what, I'm amazed at how long that thing lasted on your car, even after, what was it, a bird or something that hit it?
I was following a semi, or a dump truck, and he went over a bridge, and just the road height difference knocked a bunch of stone and sand and everything off the back of his truck, and I thought I was going to have a broken windshield, but it ended up knocking one of the 4 cups off of that airspeed indicator about 400 miles into the journey down there. And I finally took it off after 5,000 miles of driving, and I have kind of a heavy foot, so we're talking 80, 90 mile an hour at times, maybe even 100 every once in a while, but, you know, so, but that thing lasted a heck of a long time, so, I mean, that's unbalanced. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, that's what's crazy.
Exactly, so, that thing spun like crazy, I'll tell you that, though. So, but as far as doing the scale pilot,
oh yeah, they're durable.
Yeah, I don't know how scale he was. I mean, he looks pretty good.
He reminded me of the Williams brother pilots.
Yeah, to a degree, with a little more detail though. Yeah. I think.
The trick with the bad thing about the 3D printed ones with that style of 3D printing is the layered effect. I mean, from the side, it looks like it has the texture of a phone book because of the layering process of where it's layered on the top of each other. So you do have that to deal with. But when it's painted pretty well, that kind of goes away, and especially with the larger sizes. But boy, I think if you got down to 1/5 scale, 1/8 scale, or anything below 1/5, it's definitely that layering effect's going to play with your scale fidelity. It's going to have a unwanted texture that's not going to be very, very pleasant, I think, on that scale. Exactly. But larger scales would be good.
And something like that, Lyle, too, I think what would actually help would probably be like a lacquer primer to build up to kind of help smooth that down. Obviously, you'd have to go back in and sand it down to try to smooth out that layered effect. But I think you can probably work with it to a degree, you know, not trying to push people away from you or whatever. But over time, I can see where that's going to be the trend.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I think the durability, that's fine.
Yeah.
So,
it's better than putting like
stuff.
a minion in your airplane or a Cupid doll or whatever, you know.
Troll.
Yeah. So.
Alrighty, we'll move on. I'm going to ask this question so I can leave real quick again. Because I've been drinking too much, so I got to piss like a racehorse.
Wait. I know where this one's going.
Uh-oh.
Do best pilots offer a barefoot pilot?
No.
I'm assuming they're going after you, Lee.
No.
No barefoot pilot as of yet, but I don't know. I'll have to, instead of that's my face, I have to check with that's my foot.
There you
see
go.
if they can make personalized barefooted pilots.
I mean, I'm open for modeling for that.
Okay.
I mean, there will be a slight fee, but you know.
Okay.
So.
Foot models are expensive.
Oh man, I tell you, and hand models. You know, I got.
Yeah, I know. with the gouge from the bit and your.
Yeah, no kidding.
Drill bit. Why do you go barefoot at air shows? Lee?
Why do I?
Yes. Does it help you fly better? Better balance?
No, I've always had really hot feet.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what it is, so just wearing shoes, my feet are always constantly sweating and stuff like that. So growing up, I was always barefoot. So
you heard it here, ladies and gentlemen, on Chadlee show.
That's right.
Lee has hot feet.
I do. That I do. So if you want, you can feel them. So
we're Chad's joining us now, and then we're talking about feeling Lee's hot, sweaty feet.
Wow.
Went downhill fast.
Man.
This is fantastic. Next question.
That didn't take long.
I hope. Wow. See, I leave for 5 seconds, and this is what I come back to. Another question. Another question off topic. What are your thoughts on radio trays attached to a harness? Lots of German guys in my club use them, and I am going to try one out. I have a harness, just need to buy or build a tray now. The advantages are that if you bend over, the radio doesn't swing around, allowing the throttle to get bumped. Also, the weight is not around your neck, supported by the harness over the shoulders and around your back. Me personally, I could never get used to using a tray.
I couldn't either. It's just personal preference. I'm a thumber, so I just got to grip on that and I have my thumb on the sticks. But some guys that fly at their fingertips, they need something to support the transmitter, and that's the way they're used to. So it's personal.
Well, I fly with my fingertips. I'm the 2-finger pilot, but I just use the lanyard. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm a man. That's why I joined the Army and not the Air Force.
Well, I do. Just a little change of event here, though. I have a question for Jeremy now. Why is he bending over with his radio on? In Germany.
Well, I mean, I see where he's getting at. I see where you're getting at, too, Lee. But, I mean, I never recommend bending over with the radio attached to you. It's just super. Even if you have a tray, it's still very easy for your radio to go into your prop or just to get the throttle bump, like you say, whether you're using a tray or you're using a lanyard. The other thing is, if you're using a lanyard, I know for sure, a lot of times I'd wear a button-up shirt or something. Clip the lanyard to your collar or the area where your button-up shirt is, so that way it's not dangling with the chance of running into the prop when the engine's running.
Yeah, I had a buddy that did that and ended up with a nice little scar on his forehead.
Right.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Safety first.
So there you go.
Definitely, yeah.
So, all right. Does Lee have medical insurance? If not, should we start a GoFundMe page for his hand injury? What can we learn from his injury, and does he have any safety tips?
Well, like I told him, he's a plumber. He needs to rub a little shit in it and then rinse it off with piss.
That's right. Yes, I do have medical insurance. But we can still do a GoFundMe page for me anyway.
There's not enough money in the world to fund you, Lee.
I know it. Anyway, the hand injury actually happened at work. I was changing out a water heater. I don't know if everybody's seen it or not, but...
hey, Lee,
yes,
Lee, let's hold off until the safety portion. We'll answer this question in the safety portion, or talk more about that.
Boom.
All right, last one, finally. Question number 12. One more question. He must have texted one more question about 20 times to me. 20 times with 12 questions. Ask me how the math works out on that one. Anyways, do either of you own tools from Harbor Freight? I know they are cheap and Chinese made, but we don't have this in Germany, so I think I will go by and see if there is anything I need to smuggle back in my suitcase on Thursday. Well, I do not condone smuggling contraband into other countries, for one. But yes, I use Harbor Freight stuff all the time. Matter of fact, my airbrush is a Harbor Freight airbrush. It seems to spray latex the best.
Yeah, that's what I've got too.
Probably because of the terrible tolerances that are in it and latex being so thick.
Yep. And they're cheap.
Oh, yeah, yeah. If I drop it like I've been known to do, I'm only dropping a $9 airbrush versus a $150 airbrush.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of airbrushes, I have a Harbor Freight sonic cleaner that I use to clean my airbrush. It works like a charm.
Have you ever tried that duplex, or not duplex, deluxe materials or something like that out of England? You know what I'm talking about? They make glues and oh man. Anyways, I'm gonna try and search it on my phone as I describe everything. But they make a airbrush cleaner, and it'll clean anything. Matter of fact, Pete Goldsmith is the one who told me about it.
Cool.
He said that he just dumps it in, and
that's it, huh?
Literally, yeah, and lets it sit, and you don't have to do anything to clean it. Man, I gotta find
that's the biggest pain with an airbrush is keeping them clean. I mean, as soon as they get a little dirty, they're spitting and bubbling and stuff. So,
when was Monticello, Lee?
Was that when? That was September 24th, somewhere right around there.
All right. Bear with me, people. Bear with me. 24th?
Somewhere around there.
Here. Oh. All right. It is called Magic Brush. It's by Deluxe Materials. Fast-acting brush cleaner restores and revives brushes as new. This is talking about airbrushes and regular brushes, I guess. So I'll post a link to it in the description. But
do that.
Pete swears by it. So, and he uses a crapload of an airbrush. I mean, that's his trade too, and not only just his airplanes, but his wife's a painter, and his business was marketing, where he did that kind of stuff.
Oh, cool. So, I'll look that up, man. Always game for something new
like
that.
Definitely.
Yeah, he's actually turned me on to a couple of their models. I'll get off on a tangent, but have you guys ever used the ironing method for adhering, like leading edge skinning and stuff like that?
No.
Basically, what you do, I'll explain it for Lee and everybody else, or not Lee, but Lyle and everybody else. You paint it on. It's I think it's their super phatic resin that they use, and I'll put a link to that too because I took a picture of that. Genuine aliphatic resin is what it's called. But you brush it on the sheeting, and then you brush it on the ribs. And it doesn't work with balsa because balsa has too good of an insulating quality for heat. But for, like, if you're using light ply, or not light ply, but like 32nd or 64th birch ply, aircraft ply, and then you just turn your iron on, your covering iron on, all the way as hot as it gets, and you basically just iron it on. We did a sample. Were you at Pete's house and we did that sample?
It wasn't.
No, it must have been Chuck, but yeah, we did a sample, and when I tried to peel it off, it tore the rib apart that it was on. I mean, it didn't just come off. It tore it apart. It held just as strong as if you just glued it with aliphatic resin or CA or whatever.
Wow.
So that was kind of cool.
Oh, neat. All right.
So yeah. All right. I guess that's it. With this being done, I'm going to suggest we take a quick break so that I can put in a plug for Lyle and get some information out to you guys on finding his Facebook and his website and stuff. So we're going to take a quick break now. We'll be back in a little bit. Hi, everybody. Chad Osmus here from the Chadlee Show. I want to talk to you a minute about the most historically accurate, lifelike pilots in the RC hobby. Best pilots are the pilots of our choice, so accurate they are displayed in some of the world's premier aviation museums. Lyle Vasser of Best Pilot produces hand-sculpted and molded figures approximately 1/5 scale in size. Each pilot is a reproduction of actual World War II pilots, including U.S. Marine Corps Pappy Boyington, U.S. Army Air Corps Bob Sweeney, Royal Air Force Sailor Milan, German ace Gunther Roll, and Japanese ace Saburo Sakai. Vasser also offers a quarter-scale World War I German ace Lothar van Richthofen and generic 1/8 scale bomber crew figures. Unlike cloth dolly-type pilots, Best Pilots are cast in resin for a more scale appearance of flight gear. And also, unlike dolly pilots, Best Pilots are sculpted in realistic, seated postures and will stay that way no matter how grueling the mission. Prices range from $65 unpainted to $235 painted for 5th scale and $95 unpainted to $235 painted for quarter scale. Also, Best Pilots can be turned into personal versions of yourself. Using a 3D printed face matched to photos that you provide, these amazing mini-me's are truly the ultimate final touch for anyone's scale airplane. Available painted or unpainted, email Lyle Vasser at typepad.com for pricing. Don't fly with dolls, fly with Best Pilots. Go to www.bestpilots.typepad.com to order, and make sure you join Best Pilots on Facebook.
Can you still see me?
All right. What?
Okay, never mind.
Huh? We're back. We're back. Huh? Hey, we're back. I want to thank Lyle for checking out the show, or not checking it out, but doing the interview. I put his information in just during the break here. So make sure you check out his stuff. Give him some business, stuff like that. So he needs to see some kind of an increase. Otherwise, I'm a liar.
Well, I ain't gonna say it.
Yeah, you know. Anyways, we got off on a tangent. We ended up doing the questions so that Lyle could be here for all the questions. So those are done. It is what it is. We'll move on to sanding tips, which is the second topic of the show. It's a good thing it's a small topic because the show's already like 2 hours long. So I wanted to go over sanding tips because it's the start of the building season. The biggest complaint I get from people is having to sand, stuff like that. And I think the reason it's such a chore for a lot of people is because they're just not doing it the easiest way possible.
I agree.
I mean, people start out with, their rough sandpaper is like 150 grit or something like that, and to me, that's damn near finishing sandpaper.
Years ago, no kidding aside, everybody joked with me that 80 grit was my final sand.
Yeah. Roofing shingles.
That's what I started out with.
Yeah, so, I just want to go over a couple of things. One of the things is homemade sanders. We touched on it a little bit last show. I wanted to carry it on because it is an important aspect of the building process, and it can make your build enjoyable or unenjoyable if you don't have the proper sanders and the proper sandpaper, in my opinion.
Definitely. And this is something you don't want to be doing just freehand with wrapping sandpaper around your fingers and doing that. I mean, for a little tiny spot, maybe, but for the most part, you want to have some kind of a form to it.
Yep. Blocks, we talked about blocks in the last show. Get some scrap pieces of balsa that you have laying around. A lot of the balsa companies will have, where you can buy just seconds blocks, basically, and it's just random size blocks. They make great sanders. Just glue some regular 3M sandpaper to them. Did I lose you, Lee? Yeah, I guess I lost Lee, so I'm doing this by myself, and until he comes back in. You know, I make a bunch of different sizes. To put the sandpaper on the block, I just use like 3M spray adhesive. I try to stay away from CA as it can cause lumps in the sandpaper, so you have a high spot in the sandpaper basically, and it can sand a groove in. Are you back now, Lee?
I believe I am.
All right. So I just went over blocks, so now we're on. The other thing I like to use is dowels. I don't know if you use dowels and wrap sandpaper around a dowel for doing the curve sanding.
Heck yeah. Dowels and pieces of pipe, air cylinders or air tanks from Robart and stuff like that. I mean, you use whatever you can find.
Especially if you have a concave area like a fillet or something like that you have to sand, and you can't use a flat block.
This P39M building, you wouldn't believe the amount of dowels, and I was hunting I used a beer bottle, you know, for one section of it.
How would you have a beer bottle?
I know, it's hard to believe.
Man,
I know
that's
it.
odd.
But yeah, I mean, you just look around your house. There's all kinds of things. Even a glue bottle, empty glue bottle or full glue bottle.
Yep.
The round ones will give you a round shape. Obviously, the oblong ones, give you a little tighter point and stuff for a smaller fillet.
An oblong
something
shape?
like that. Hey, have you ever seen that one?
And that kind of goes along with the shaped ones. The dowels having a shaped. And don't be afraid to cut something with like a V-notch in it, so that if you have to sand on a lot of sport models where they have a solid control surface, and you can sand the V shape into your control surface for the deflection. That works great.
Oh, yeah. I've used pencils and pens and you name it. I've pretty much used it. The sticky dash sandpaper works great for that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, well, and like I said, that you missed when you were having your issues, but I just put mine on with 3M spray.
Exactly.
Yeah. And pieces of metal, those work great because you can get super thin where it still has some rigidity. Nail files, stuff like that.
Definitely.
So, and then going into like a store-bought sanders, you have your T-bars, your foam sanders. Electric sander, stuff like that.
One thing, basically on the homemade, going back to that real quick.
Going back to the homemade.
Just for a split second. One thing that we talked about in tools that we use that doesn't get talked about very much is sanding, is the 1-2-3 blocks. It gives you a perfect 90-degree edge. So they work great for doing a straight 90-degree edge anyway.
Yeah, and to go along with that, I like to use my cutting board. I have a cutting board. It's what I use to cut on. It's just a piece of 3/8 plywood, basically. And I make sure that there's a good edge on one side, nice straight edge, and that allows me, I can put my stick, if I'm doing a stick, I can put my stick up to that edge, and if I just need to sand just a hair off, I can just barely put it over that edge and then run the sander on it, and my cutting board stops the sandpaper from cutting in too deep.
Correct.
And that's a great tip. Yeah, so stuff like that and whatnot. I'll try and maybe, I'm building a plane right now. I'll try and get some video of little tips, sanding tips that I use, So put a video up.
Exactly.
Probably won't have the video done by the time the show airs, so there won't be a link to it. But watch the Chadlee page on Facebook. That's where I'll post my stuff. We also have a YouTube page. I'll post it on there too.
Go.
So.
All right, back to store bought.
Yep, store bought T-bars. One thing I suggest is get yourself a long T-bar so that you can sand your wing and get it nice and flat. Whether it's a tapered wing or a Hershey bar wing or where the thickness, the thickness of the ribs taper. Either way, it's very uncommon, unless you have an elliptical wing, to not have where the wing is straight, whether it's tapered or whatever. You agree, Lee?
You want that to be even all the way across. I mean, that's the way your ribs are laid out and everything. So Like you said, like a Spitfire wing, it gets a little bit different, but, for the most part, you're not building that kind of a wing all the time, or a Stinson wing, so, but
So
I agree, the longer the better, actually.
Yeah, and then, I mentioned the foam sanders, there's a couple different types of foam sanders. They have the rigid ones that, they're normally a block. Some of them will have like a 45 on one edge. We talked about this too, for using it for sanding the leading edges of your control surfaces where you need that V. But they also have foam pads, and I like to, after I get, like, say, a leading edge done, or if I'm carving a plug for a cowl or a nose cone or a tail cone, anything like that, after I use my hard block, I'll go on just real quickly with that. It's like a little foam pad. They're like a 1/4 inch thick, super pliable, and I'll just rub over it real quickly, and that'll kind of knock off any of the high spots and still keep that nice curve.
Exactly. This kind of goes, you're talking about foam there. Even the hard foam, going back to a homemade block, the 2-inch or 2-inch thick, or, even 1-inch thick, insulating foam that you'd use. You can glue sandpaper to that and cut it to all the oddball shapes that you need, so.
Definitely, yeah. And the advantage of that is if you have say you're doing a leading edge, you can actually carve the shape of the leading edge into that pink foam very easily and quickly, and then you have a shape so you can keep your leading edge nice and even the whole way, the same radius, So, are you still with me, Lee? I think I lost Lee again.
I'm still here, but I don't know what the heck's going on with my internet here.
It's funny how it worked so great when Lyle was here, but anyways,
my computer.
So the other type of store-bought sanders, they have pre-shaped sanders, like Great Plains has the T-bar style where they have a bunch of oddball shapes in. I'm not a big fan of those because the shape normally isn't the greatest for every application. It's just a one application thing.
I bet.
So I'm not a big fan of the Great Plains pre-shaped things. You know what I'm talking about? That T-bar like thing?
Yeah, the one that's got the 90-degree and half round and.
Yeah, you like that at all?
I bought one when I first started modeling, and I think I used it once and did more damage than I did good with it. And I think either gave it away or threw it away, one of the two.
Yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of them. Some people may have some luck with them. I'm not saying they don't have their place, but I haven't found a great use. Me personally, I'd rather make my own so that I can make it exactly how I want it.
Yeah, I agree. For something like that, I don't know if you remember the old House of Balsa small planes and little ones, like the 10 size small airplanes. It worked good for something like that, for a leading edge or the trailing edge.
Yeah.
But once you start getting bigger, it wasn't cutting it for me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And then, you got your electric sanders. I don't know about you, Lee. I'm very hesitant to use an electric sander on my models just because I find doing it by hand, I can get it done just as quick, and sometimes an electric sander will take it off too quick, and you'll end up screwing up.
Early in my building career, I found this sweet little electric, I'm drawing blank now. Belt sander. Little belt sander.
I don't know. Belt sander. You used the belt sander?
That was early in my days. I was like, man, I'm just sanding crap and that all goes back to where, you're using 150 grit trying to do a rough cut. And I was basically polishing the wood instead of cutting the wood, So I just got to the point where it was so frustrating that I got stuff that I can make this thing go away quick. And I had to end up getting rid of that because, like you say, you spend all this time building a wing and then you destroy the leading edge on it, trying to, quick sand it down.
You know, and another thing that people don't think about using, and it works really good on plywood, is files. You know, metal files. You'd be amazed how well they work on plywood, especially cleaning out any kind of notches or anything like that for stringers, or even where you have another piece of 1/8-inch plywood going in.
Or cutting out your own servo pockets or whatever, and that kind of stuff it works great for.
Yep. And then another thing I want to talk about is your permagrit type stuff, you know. Carbide cutters. I have a set for my Dremel tool. You can get them at a bunch of different places. Robart is one of the main ones. They have 2 different flavors, you can say. They have a coarse and a fine one. That's the set that I have is a Robart set.
Yep.
So I think you have the same set, right, Lee?
And you can also buy the hand ones too. I can't remember the name of the company right off the top of my head, but they got a set that's got like a half round, and they got basically the files.
Yeah, I think the one that I've seen was like an English company, wasn't it? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, it's like a set of 7 tools or whatever. They got a flat bar that just, you know, real thin sheet metal. Then they had a half round of that, and then just a round tube. And then they had like a triangle, a square, and a round, basically file that had the permagrit embedded into it with a handle built into it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, with the permagrit, if you're just using it on wood, it will last you forever. There's no question about that. You know, one thing I've learned using my Dremel ones is if you're going over CA, sometimes it'll gum up. Just soak it in some acetone, and that CA will soften right up. And just a regular, like a brass brush, because it's softer than the carbide, will clean it out, and it'll be like a brand new bit again.
Definitely. Don't try cutting a lot of metal with it.
No, you touch metal with it, and you're going to destroy them.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, you know, and another way to take off material is like a plane, a hand plane or a block plane, trim plane, razor plane, whatever they are. So I don't know what we talked a little bit, you know, and we talked about what's called the trim plane, which is the real small plane with it's got like an 1/8-inch blade that's actually sharpened, and then you have your razor plane. You use both of those, right, Lee?
I use my razor plane more than I do the trim plane, but that's just me. So.
Yeah, and I grew up using. I mean, I have a furniture making construction background, so I'm used to the rigger, not a razor plane, and I use a trim plane, and I sharpen mine, and I get crazy sharpened with it. It's just as sharp. It works just as well as a razor, in my opinion. But the other thing I wanted to mention that a lot of people don't think about because they're so big is a good block plane. And what I like to use the block plane for is I actually have it mounted in a table, and instead of moving the plane over the wood, I use it when I'm doing sheeting and or planking, and you have to angle the edges just slightly on your strips for planking. I can just run it right. I can hold the piece of wood and run it across. Huh. If you guys could see the way Lee has frozen right now. He's got his hand up with a frown on his face. I'm going to take a picture with my phone so that I can put it on the Facebook page here. Hold on just a second. This is hilarious. All right. If my camera would ever load up. Oh, I just missed it. Damn it. I was trying to get a picture with how you froze up.
Hey.
So did you have something about the block plane with the planking?
No, I mean, usually like when I go to do my strip planking and whatnot, I end up using the balsa stripper, and will actually block up the edge of it, so that when you're actually cutting it, you're actually cutting the bevel into it. When I do my strip planking anyway. But I can see where the way you're doing it works out good too.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all on what you get comfortable doing. You know, I normally cut all of my strips at one time, so I'm not having to cut one, glue one, cut one, glue one. So that's where the block plane comes in handy for me. But if you're cutting it one at a time, yeah, and I mean, you can make with the stripper doing it that way. You can, if you want one that's only a 1/4 inch, you know, one that's a 1/2 inch, whatever. You can do that very easily. Master air screw, balsa stripper. Those things are the handiest tool. If
Oh
you
man, they are.
Yeah, I don't buy any stick wood. I use all sheet wood, and I strip my own, or use a table saw if it's wider than like 3/8 of an inch. I'll use a table saw and cut it because I mean to carry every size stick is crazy.
Definitely.
So. All right, and you got any more on the planes or any of that before we move into grits?
One thing for new guys that are getting into scratch or just building in general. Great Plains had an electric plane. Does it work? Yes. It takes some definitely getting used to. It kind of goes back to that belt sander thing where you can really mess a project up by going too quick or something. Where you think you're just taking off a little bit, next thing you know, you've got a great big gouge in it. Can you repair it? Yeah, you can, but try not to get to that point where you're repairing things that you're trying to make, you know. So just a forewarning anyway that, you know, if you see that, you go, oh man, this is going to be so much easier and whatnot, it may cause, easier sometimes cause you more headaches.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I like to do everything by hand. I don't like to use power tools or, I mean, a drill motor is one thing, but some kind of a power sander or power plane, I think, is just too easy to take off way too much, way too quick. Not that it can't be repaired, but it just sucks having to do that.
Yeah, I do enough damage myself anyway, so.
Yeah, well, I agree. So, anything else you wanted to add to that, Lee?
Basically.
I guess not. Oh, are you back or are you froze? Oh, this is great. So, I guess Lee's froze up again. We're going to talk about grit real quick. I'll talk about that, then we'll take a break and reset some computers and get stuff started again. But the other thing, like we mentioned earlier, for grit and sandpaper to use, you know, I start off, if I have to do any kind of carving on a block or anything like that, I use like 60 grit sandpaper.
I'm back.
Oh, Lee's back.
I have no idea what's going on here, man. My signal's good here. I don't know. It has to be something in my computer going nuts. Yeah.
All right, we're still recording. It almost is like it started a whole new conversation for a second there. So I'll like I was saying, I just started getting into the grit. You know, I said for starting out, carving, stuff like that, even leading edges where you have the basically the say it's a 1 1/4 by 3/8 piece on the front that you have to round. You know, I like to start out with like a 60 grit, you know, and when I'm carving plugs or you know, a big area like that, I'm not afraid to use a 36 grit sandpaper to get a rough shape
Exactly.
started.
You want to knock down the wood, you know, fairly quick. You don't want to go so far that you've gone into, you know, your sheeting or whatever. But yeah, you definitely want to remove material. You don't want to be polishing it.
Yeah, I mean, start out with a 60, 80 grit, you know, and then once you get closer, then you can move into your 150 or 120, you know, and then into your 220 for, I mean, and to be perfectly honest with you, on balsa wood, the finest I ever get is 220.
I usually hit about 150, then I go to my, usually I either fiberglass in or, you know, covering or something like that, but I mean.
Yeah, if you're fiberglassing, it doesn't matter. And then I'll go maybe a little bit finer sometime on that, depending on what type of finish I'm trying to achieve. But, I mean, even after fiberglassing, you put the primer on, what do you normally use for your finish?
It's usually around 220, somewhere around there, maybe 300. You know, depending.
Yeah, I'm the same way, yeah.
Or,
I mean, if I'm going for a super gloss finish, then you have to go a little bit further. But for most warbirds where it's a satin or something like that, you're fine at 220.
Exactly.
You know?
Also, too, you know, if you're painting, kind of makes a difference, too. If you get it super, super smooth, the paint doesn't have a whole lot to bite into then, like a fiberglass material.
Yeah.
So a little bit of tooth is not a bad thing. Especially with latex.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get it so polished down, you'll actually start pulling up in sheets, if it can't adhere to the substrate.
Yeah, and I mean that goes along with prepping your surface before
Correct.
paint too. I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter how good of a sanding job you did if you still have dirt and stuff like that on, you're going to get a crappy finish too.
I agree 100%.
So, all right. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about with the sanding stuff like that?
We did. We got to cover it unless somebody else has got more questions on it, but they can always post that at another time.
Yeah, definitely. Don't be afraid to post some photos later on too.
One thing I would like to ask, I know we kind of cross post things. If we can try to get the questions all kind of in one spot, on our Facebook page, might help. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I spend a lot of time searching all the posts, and I mean, I know it's easier, but if it's on a post where like RC Warbird Pilots or Balsa Builder Association, something like that, if you can click the link that I share and post it on the Chadlee page, that works out way better, and it's guaranteed that we're going to get to your question. And if I miss some of the questions, I apologize for that. You know. It gets tough when you have to look in 20 different places for the questions.
Exactly. So.
All right. So now we have a new segment that we're trying out, In the Toolbox with Lee Watkins. And let me pause for a second for our fancy intro to this.
Lee, where are you going? We're trying to do a show here. Oh, I guess it's time for In the Toolbox with Lee Watkins.
All right, so Lee, take it away with what you got, buddy.
Kind of tied this in with the last podcast we did. We was talking about tools and whatnot. I thought it'd be kind of neat to maybe highlight a tool or what have you in each segment. What I'm going to point out that I've used quite a bit here is by Foremost Products. It's called the Miter Cut Precision Cutting Tool, number 151. The Miter Cut allows the craftsperson to make accurate cuts both in wood and plastic. The Miter Cut uses single-edged razor blades. The adjustable fence swings through an arc of precise degree marks with a positive stop at 90 degrees. This allows the modeler to make accurate, repeatable cuts for tight fits on mitered corners. The Miter Cut is an excellent tool for many hobby requirements, including model airplane and ship parts, model railroad and train layouts, miniatures, furniture and picture frames, mitered joints on rubber trims and moldings such as Foremost window flange and the canopy trim. The Miter Cut is made in the United States from alderwood and glass-filled nylon. And on their website, they are advertising it for $27.50, and we will post a link on the page here for it. They've got some pretty cool tools in there, for building, scratch building and whatnot. And another thing, when you're kind of, if you got a free minute and you're searching around on the internet, I know I get lost watching videos of bad drivers in Russia or whatever on Facebook or what have you, but start looking, at different hobbies that are similar. Think of something that would be in a hobby store. The train guys, they have all kinds of neat stuff that we can use in our airplane stuff.
Definitely.
They're using foam, little tiny screws. Just you name it, and it's there. One thing, the stupid little thing that I found a long time ago. It was actually for RC cars and for the trains, was the grease, the oil. They had a little bottle, squeeze bottle. They had a little metal tip, and it's almost perfect for fifth scale rivets, putting on the airplanes and stuff. I mean, it's just something that, you just look at it and like, wow, I could use that for this purpose. So,
Yeah, I never thought about using that for rivets. Not not like the flush rivets, but
yeah,
like
for,
a pop
for a
rivet
raised
type
rivet.
thing.
You know, it works pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I spit all over my microphone.
there you go.
By the way.
Where's your pop filter at?
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely check them out.
Right.
They have a couple other cool parts and whatnot. So we'll try to highlight some more tools next time.
Yeah, and like Lee said, we'll get a link up to that so that you guys can see exactly what he was talking about. So that brings us on to our next section, the what's happening. And man, is there a lot of stuff happening in the last week or two. So I don't know if you want to do yours first, and then I'll go on with mine. Do you have anything going on?
No, not a whole lot. About the only thing I got going on is I'm sure some of the people have seen my little injury that I did to myself on Friday. I tried lightening myself up a little bit, get rid of some weight, but it didn't work out as well as I planned. So,
yep.
But I at least got to work a little bit early anyway. I'll put it that way. So I'll say, yeah.
That's a plus. How's your hand feeling today, by the way?
It's a little sore when you go to pick something up. You know, like a good bottle of iced tea or what have you. You know. Yeah, bug juice. You know.
After a few pickups,
No,
so it's not hurting anymore.
It doesn't. So, I just learned to use my other hand, use my right hand, which is my predominant hand. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I know a lot of things transpired since the last podcast we had here. So this might turn into a 3-hour show here.
I'm going to make it quick because I don't want to dwell on it too much. But as many of you know, I was permanently laid off from Boss USA. They're making some changes in the shop apparently. I happen to be one of those changes. And it's 5 o'clock at Lee's house. It's actually like 7 o'clock at Lee's house. This has turned into a really long podcast. But yeah, so I mean, I was laid off. It is what it is. So I'm not working at Boss USA anymore. You know, like I told people, everybody was saying, "Oh, I hope you don't leave the hobby. I hope you don't leave the industry." Blah blah blah. You know, I was passionate about RC before I started working for Boss USA. I'm still passionate about RC. They can't take that away from me. So I'll always be out there. I was very passionate about making the how-to videos and that kind of stuff, and that was all me. That wasn't Boss USA that was wanting me to do that. That was me that was wanting to do that. So you guys can still expect that, and I guess the best thing I can tell you is subscribe to the Chadlee Show's Facebook and YouTube page, because that's where I'm going to be posting a lot of it now. And with that, a lot of you guys knew we're watching the Boss USA Facebook with a post that I was doing, or post that I was making on a plane that I was building, one of my personal favorites. They actually gave me the rights to that plane. That all took place this weekend, so I can officially announce that I am going to continue making the plane. It is a third scale tri-pacer. I can let you guys know that's for everybody who is wondering. I'm still debating on if I'm going to make it into a kit or a short kit. It's a matter of if I can get some people to do some laser cutting for me. I don't have a laser. I don't have the funds right now to buy a laser. And I've been talking with a couple of people and working with a couple of people on doing laser cutting, stuff like that. I'd still have to source out the place for the plastics and stuff like that. But there's still a very strong possibility that you will see a kit come out. I'm not 100% guaranteeing it. I will make a Facebook page dedicated to that will carry on the build, and I'll post more often on the build of that then also. I got Lee trying to distract me. So yeah, I mean, there's been a lot happening with me. I'm still undecided if I'm gonna continue my career, my livelihood in the RC industry, or if I'm gonna go elsewhere for work. I have a lot of other skills outside of RC that make me valuable to employers, I feel. So yeah, I guess it'll be curious to see where the next few weeks take me. You guys will definitely be in on that journey, and don't worry, I'm not leaving the hobby. I'm not going to quit making my videos because I really do enjoy teaching others the art of building models and stuff like that. And now maybe I can branch out and do other things that are more of a personal favorite of mine versus trying to strategically design stuff for what the market is having.
Yep.
So
yeah, you better not leave the hobby because I'll kick your ass, man. Yeah.
Well, don't worry. It'll give me more time to be on the flight line and have fun with you guys. So yeah, there's some options out there for me to not full-time stay in the hobby, but part-time stay in the hobby. So I'm looking into those, and we'll see what happens where everything takes me.
Maybe we can start a GoFundMe for a laser cutter.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Let's do a GoFundMe. I'll make some kits for people.
There you go.
But yeah, so that's what's been going on with me. You know, I've been kind of tight-lipped, and don't bother asking me questions on what Balsa USA is planning on doing because I respect the confidentiality that I had there, and I'm not going to give out any of that information. So it is what it is. You know, I could very easily get butthurt over the whole thing, but I'm not going to. There's no point in it. It's not going to help me out any. All it's going to do is make me look like a jackass.
It's better to take the high road and go that way.
Definitely, and yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I had a good run with them. I enjoyed working with them. I felt like I did some good there, and I learned a lot working there. So I learned a crap load about making kits. You know, it's one thing to design an airplane and build one for yourself, but to design an airplane that everybody can build with all the details drawn and all that stuff is completely different. You know,
definitely.
And having to think production-wise on what's most economical so that a kit that should be, you know, $600 doesn't come out to be, you know, $1,800.
Exactly.
You know, so.
Exactly. Plus your modeler too. That helps. You know. So.
Yeah, definitely. So that's all I really have on what's happening. Outside of that, I haven't done a whole lot of work in the shop. I plan on getting in there in the next week or so. So. We'll see what happens.
Did you get any snow the other day?
No, I did not get any snow. People to the south of me did. People to the west of me did. But I did not. Not a snowflake in sight.
I know a couple guys around us over towards Elkhart area said they've seen snow coming down. I don't know. I don't buy it. But
my sister-in-law lives in Duluth, Minnesota. She got 10 inches.
It was a good night for her, huh?
They were making snowmen. Yeah. I'm going to leave that comment because it's my sister-in-law.
There you go.
So, all right. So that's
all right.
What's happening.
Now we get to move on to our next news segment, don't we?
Next news segment, Safety 101. And this comes about...
Wait for the intro.
Oh, yeah. We're making an intro for this one, too? Okay, and the intro starts now.
You know what that means. It's time for a safety tip from the Chadlee Show.
Anyways, I want to talk about safety, and I want to talk about hand placement. And being aware of what could happen with where your hands are placed. And, you know, I'm going to go and talk about Lee's drill bit incident, but I also have basically the same thing that I can talk about that happened on a model. And what happened with Lee was his drill bit broke, right, Lee? And when the drill bit broke, what was still attached to the drill shifted off, obviously, when it snapped, because he wasn't pushing straight in, apparently, and went into his hand. Now, Lee's stuff isn't working. I guess what I want to say is be aware of what you're doing. If you're drilling, make sure you're pushing straight in, you're not at an angle. If you are doing it at an angle, make sure if the drill bit happens to break that your momentum isn't going to take it into one of your extremities. I have
I'm back.
Can you hear me yet?
Hi again.
All right, you want to tell the story of how this happened? I kind of briefly explained what I think happened. Basically, Lee was a dumbass.
Basically what I was doing, I was at work, plumber by trade. I was changing out a water heater, and the flue pipe on it was a 3-inch metal flue pipe, and whoever installed the original had drilled and pop riveted the flue pipe together. Well, in order for me to put the new water heater in, I needed to trim down the metal, and in order to do that, I needed to drill out the rivet to basically get the piece of pipe out so I could trim it. So this flue pipe is probably like 6.5, maybe about 6 feet in the air. So I'm drilling over my head, holding onto a 3-inch round pipe that's basically in the middle of the air. So as I'm drilling, the drill bit breaks, and of course it hits the round pipe and slid right into my hand. And of course, it all happened so fast. It was still going. The drill bit was real jagged because it was a brittle drill bit, and it took a pretty good gouge out of my hand. I don't know exactly how far it went in there, but it was pretty far in there. So it's still pretty deep right now. So it's a little sore yet. So definitely. But thank God I got another hand for a beer, so.
Yeah, there you go. And I had the same thing happen. I was working on an RV4, and I had a chunk of glue, and I was using my number 11 blade, and I was holding the airplane and trying to break that chunk of glue off with the number 11 blade, not thinking that when it finally broke, my hand was going to go with all the pressure, and I stabbed my hand and my thumb. I don't know if you can see it right there, Lee. But I ended up getting, 8 stitches to fix that one. Yeah. So,
definitely.
Live and learn.
Definitely. And one thing, building, we're always using an X-Acto knife. And, they're always laying around. One good tip that I found is rubber banding a stick of wood to it so it doesn't roll off. Because I don't know about you, but I have stuck my foot when a razor knife rolled off the table.
Well, not only that, but your first thing to do is to catch it so you close your legs quick. And I have heard of people stabbing themselves in the thighs and jamming it in their ways,
definitely.
So.
And if you keep up on your blades and keep them nice and sharp, you don't even really feel it go in. Because that's how sharp they are.
Yeah.
So.
Definitely. All right, so there's Safety 101 for you guys. Next one, seeing as we did the questions already, we will talk about notable events. I don't really have anything right now in the near future.
No, not that I can foresee other than it's building season now. Fine.
Yeah, building season, so watch for that. Watch the Facebook pages for Lee and I's builds. We'll try and post them on the Chadlee show, too. So
I did open up.
I guess.
Well, one thing I did open up a album in our Chadlee thing for the P39 project. I threw up a couple pictures on that. So.
Yeah, and I'm building a Newport 28 and a Panther and apparently my Tri-Pacer now. So we'll see how quickly I get back on all that stuff.
So. Cool. So we'll try to keep those updated. Go from there.
Yeah. You have anything else before the end of the show?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Well, I guess.
Did you notice it was kind of quiet though?
Because
we
three quarters
of
here.
The show tonight.
Yeah. We made up for it. That's for damn sure. It's turning out to be. It'll probably be about a 2-hour and 45-minute show. So, alrighty. I guess that brings us to the end of the show, eh? All right. Keep calm and build the plane, guys.
What happens in the shop, the hangar stays in the hangar. Till next time, guys.
All right.
See ya.
See you later.